There is a photograph, perhaps on your phone or in a dusty album. In it, a moment is perfectly preserved. A smile, a slant of light, a gathering of loved ones. Everything in the frame is held still, safe from the relentless march of time. And when you look at it, you feel a gentle warmth, a fondness for what was. But if you linger for a moment longer, another feeling may arise, something quieter, more complex, a subtle ache. Not because the memory is a sad one, but because it is a memory. The moment is a ghost, a beautiful echo in a hall you can no longer enter. You might feel this same echo in other places. After achieving a long-sought goal, a promotion, a new home, a sense of quiet emptiness can follow the initial thrill. A voice that whispers, "Is this it? What now?" You see it in the mirror, in the lines that tell stories of laughter and worry. You feel it in relationships that shift and evolve, sometimes growing together, sometimes drifting apart. Our modern world is built on a promise of permanence. We are taught to build solid foundations, to seek secure careers, to find a happiness that will last, to construct an identity and hold on to it with all our might. We strive and we struggle to nail everything down, to create a life that is stable, predictable, and safe. Yet, the universe has one unwavering rule: the law of change. Life is not a solid structure, it is a flowing river, and the deep, persistent anxiety of our time, the stress that hums beneath the surface of our days, is the friction generated by our desperate attempt to freeze that river. It is the exhaustion that comes from fighting a battle we can never win, the disappointment of clinging to things that must, by their very nature, slip through our fingers. But what if there is another way? What if the source of our suffering is not the fact that things change, but our profound resistance to this truth? What if peace is not found in building higher walls, but in learning how to build a raft? There exists an ancient wisdom, a path explored not as a system of belief, but as a deep science of the mind, a practical set of tools and insights designed to help us see reality clearly, to understand the nature of our own consciousness, and to find a genuine, unshakable freedom, not by stopping the river, but by learning to flow with it. This is an invitation to that path, a journey into the heart of impermanence, and a discovery of the peace that awaits on the other side of letting go. We live within a story, a grand narrative so deeply embedded in the fabric of our culture that we rarely think to question it. This story provides the blueprint for a successful life, a life of substance and meaning. It is a story of construction, of accumulation, of permanence. From our earliest days, we are handed the tools to build. We are taught to lay a foundation of good grades, to erect a framework of higher education, to build a career that climbs steadily upward, like a skyscraper reaching for a stable, cloudless sky. We are encouraged to find a partner and build a home, a fortress of love and security with a white picket fence to keep the unpredictable world at bay. We are told to gather possessions, to fill this home with things that reflect our taste and status, things that feel solid and real to the touch. We are advised to cultivate a strong identity, a personality as reliable and unchanging as a granite statue, so that others, and we ourselves, will always know who we are. The blueprint is clear. The goal is stability. The unspoken promise is that if you build well enough, if your walls are thick enough, and your foundation deep enough, you can create a life that withstands the winds of change, a fortress of permanence, in which you can find lasting happiness and security. This pressure for a linear, ever-ascending life is a primary source of our quiet anxieties. Consider the modern career path. The traditional idea of a career ladder, of joining a company and climbing, rung by rung towards a comfortable retirement, still holds a powerful grip on our imagination. It suggests order, progress, and predictability. Yet, the reality for most is vastly different. The modern economy is a fluid, often turbulent sea. Industries are disrupted overnight. Companies restructure, roles become obsolete. People pivot, retrain, start over. They experience setbacks, layoffs, periods of uncertainty. The profound stress many feel is not just financial, it is existential. It is the jarring gap between the rigid blueprint of the ladder and the chaotic reality of the sea. We feel like failures, not because we are not working hard, but because our lives do not match. The story we were told was the only path to success. The same illusion haunts our relationships. We are fed fairy tales of happily ever after, a beautiful ideal that subtly poisons our real connections with the expectation of stasis. We fall in love with a person in a particular moment, and then we build a mental shrine to that version of them, wanting them to remain forever as they were. But people are not statues, they are rivers. They grow, they learn, they suffer, they change. Their beliefs evolve, their priorities shift. When our partner no longer fits the perfect, unchanging image we hold in our minds, we feel betrayed, not by them, but by the law of change itself. We cling to the ghost of yesterday's love, unable to fully embrace the living, breathing, evolving person in front of us today. This clinging, this demand for permanence in another, is often mistaken for devotion, but it is the very thing that suffocates love and creates suffering. And most subtly, we cling to a fixed identity. We define ourselves by our roles, our accomplishments, our beliefs. I am a doctor. I am an artist. I am a parent. I am a rational person. These labels provide a comforting sense of self. But when life challenges these labels, when the doctor faces an incurable disease, when the artist loses their inspiration, when the parent's child leaves home, the identity structure cracks, and we feel a terrifying sense of groundlessness. We are more than our labels, yet we have invested so much of our sense of worth in their permanence that we feel lost without them. Into this chasm of uncertainty, materialism offers a seductive, tangible solution. If our careers, relationships, and identities feel fluid and unreliable, then perhaps we can find stability in things we can see and touch. The act of acquiring and possessing becomes a way to exert control, to build a physical bulwark against the formless anxiety of impermanence. A new car in the driveway feels like a concrete achievement. A home filled with expensive furniture feels like a solid personal kingdom. A wardrobe of fashionable clothes feels like a shield of identity. We surround ourselves with objects, hoping that their weight and presence will somehow anchor our lives, stopping the relentless forward motion of time. We become curators of our own personal museums, filled with artifacts that are meant to declare, I am here, I am real, I am stable. But this is a profound illusion, for the very objects we acquire to defy change are themselves slaves to it. The new car gets its first scratch, its technology becomes outdated, the beautiful furniture fades and wears down, the fashionable clothes go out of style. The house that felt like a fortress requires constant maintenance to fight off decay. The satisfaction of a new purchase is fleeting, a momentary pause in the underlying unease. This truth fuels the engine of consumerism, which does not sell us objects so much as it sells us the temporary feeling of permanence. The cycle is endless, a constant chase to replace the decaying with the new, simply to maintain the fiction that we are in control. This illusion has now found its most powerful and sophisticated expression in our digital world. Social media is, in essence, a a technology for freezing time. Our profiles become living archives, permanent galleries of our past selves. With every post, every photo, every check-in, we are contributing to a meticulously curated, seemingly eternal version of our lives. Unlike a dusty photo album, this digital past is always present, just a scroll away, looking more vivid and orderly than the messy, unpredictable reality of the present moment. We can scroll back years in an instant and see a younger, perhaps happier, version of ourselves. A past relationship in its vibrant beginning, a moment of triumph, perfectly framed and filtered. This creates a profound cognitive dissonance. Our digital life feels archived and permanent, while our embodied present moment life is inherently fleeting and in flux. We begin to compare our chaotic inner world with the polished exterior of our own digital history, and a toxic nostalgia takes root. We find ourselves clinging to these digital ghosts, these past versions of who we were, because they feel more real and stable than the uncertainty of who we are becoming. We mourn the passing of moments with an intensity we never have before, because we have a perfect, unblemished record of them to constantly remind us of what has been lost. The digital world promises to save everything, but in doing so, it makes it harder for us to let anything go. There is an old story of a powerful king who became obsessed with the idea of building a castle that could never decay. He sent his emissaries to the corners of the earth to find materials that were immune to time. He sought wood that would never rot, stone that would never erode, and metal that would never tarnish. His days were consumed with the blueprints of this immortal fortress. As he obsessed over the permanence of his castle, he failed to notice the grey hairs multiplying in his beard. He ignored the growing weariness in his bones and the new lines etched upon his face. He dismissed the reports that the allegiance of his subjects was shifting, that his enemies were growing stronger, and that his own kingdom, the very source of his power, was in a state of constant, subtle change. He was so focused on building a monument to permanence that he became blind to the impermanence of everything that truly mattered, including himself. This king is each of us. His castle is our stable career, our material possessions, our fixed identities, our curated digital lives. These are the fortresses we build to deny a fundamental, terrifying truth, the truth that underpins our entire societal obsession with permanence. This is the fear of loss, the fear of uncertainty, and ultimately, the fear of our own death. Our struggle to keep everything the same, to control every outcome, to stop the clock, is a deep, often unconscious strategy to create the fantasy that we, too, are permanent, that we, too, will not have to face an end. This story, this blueprint for a life that cannot truly exist, sets us up for a constant, exhausting battle with the very nature of reality. It is a recipe for quiet desperation, a source of endless friction between how we think life should be and how it actually is. Having seen the architecture of this grand illusion, we must now give a name to the reality it tries to hide. We must look directly at the universal law that governs all things, a principle the Buddha called Anicca. Anicca. The word itself sounds ancient, foreign, perhaps esoteric. It comes from Pali, the language of the earliest Buddhist texts, and it holds within its 3 syllables one of the most profound and liberating truths available to human consciousness. Anicca means impermanence. It means that everything changes. It is a simple, almost obvious statement, yet a complete and total understanding of this single word has the power to dismantle the entire fortress of illusion we have spent our lives constructing. It is the key that unlocks the cage of our own expectations. To truly grasp Anicca is not to learn a new belief, but to awaken to a reality that has been present all along, a reality humming beneath the surface of every single experience. It is the universe's most fundamental law, its most consistent rhythm, its most intimate secret, whispered in the passing of every moment. To begin, we must understand that Anicca is not a pessimistic philosophy. It is not a gloomy declaration that everything is decaying and therefore life is pointless. This is a common and profound misunderstanding. Instead, Anicca should be viewed as a universal law, as objective and impersonal as the law of gravity. We do not get angry at gravity for pulling a glass from our hand and shattering it on the floor. We may be frustrated at the result, but we do not resent the law itself. We understand it is simply how the universe operates. We learn to work with it, to be mindful of it, to respect its power. Anicca is precisely the same. It is not a moral judgment on the world. It is a description of its mechanics. The principle states that all conditioned things are in a state of flux. The word conditioned here is crucial. It means anything that arises in dependence on other factors, anything that is composite, anything that is put together. A tree is conditioned by a seed, soil, water, and sunlight. A car is conditioned by metal, plastic, engineering, and labor. A human body is conditioned by cells, organs, air, and food. Even an emotion is conditioned, arising from a thought, a memory, or a sensory input. Anything and everything that is created, composed, or constructed is, by its very nature, subject to change and eventual dissolution. It cannot be otherwise. This is not a tragedy, it is a statement of fact. It is the operating system of existence, and to fight it is as futile and as exhausting as trying to jump into the air and stay there. The Buddha and later masters describe this law as operating on different levels of subtlety, and seeing these layers helps us to appreciate its all-pervading nature. The first level is the most obvious, the gross and observable reality of change. We see this everywhere. We see the slow, patient erosion of a mountain range under wind and rain. We see the dramatic cycle of the seasons, the vibrant green of summer giving way to the stark bareness of winter, only to be reborn in the tender shoots of spring. We see it in our own lives, in the way a city skyline transforms over a decade, in the way a cherished piece of clothing wears thin, in the way our own faces in old photographs seem to belong to a familiar stranger. This level of Anicca is undeniable, a constant, large-scale demonstration that nothing holds its form forever. The second level is more intimate, a perpetual, silent change happening within us at the microscopic level. Our bodies, which feel so solid and so uniquely us, are in fact not entities, but processes. They are dynamic colonies of trillions of cells, constantly dying and being replaced. The skin you have today is not the skin you had a month ago. Your skeleton regenerates over the course of a decade. You are a living example of Heraclitus's famous insight that one can never step in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person. You are a biological river. The form and pattern may seem consistent day to day, but the substance is in constant, ceaseless flow. To contemplate this is to see that the feeling of solid, unchanging selfhood is an illusion created by a process too subtle for our ordinary perception. The third level of Anicca is the most profound, the very heart of the teaching. This is the reality of momentary change. This insight reveals that the universe does not flow like a smooth river, but pulses like a light flashing on and off with inconceivable speed. every single unit of experience, a sight, a sound, a taste, a thought, a feeling, arises, exists for an infinitesimally brief moment, and then utterly ceases, giving its energy to the arising of the next moment. The continuity we perceive in the world and in our own minds is a cinematic illusion. A film is not a moving picture. It is a series of thousands of static still images projected so quickly that our brain connects them into a seamless narrative of motion. Our consciousness, according to this deep insight, works in the same way. There is no solid, enduring thinker behind our thoughts. Instead, there is just one thought moment, arising and ceasing, which conditions the next thought moment. This happens with such incredible rapidity that we create the story of a continuous me who is doing the thinking. This is the deepest, most subtle, and most transformative level of Anicca. It is the realization that reality is not a collection of things, but a dance of pure process. There is a beautiful Zen story about a master who owned a particularly fine and precious teacup. He cherished it and used it for his daily tea with great mindfulness and appreciation. He would often tell his students, while holding the cup, "This teacup is already broken." He was not being negative or morbid. He was practicing the wisdom of Anicca. By constantly holding the awareness of the cup's inevitable end, he was completely free to enjoy its presence, its beauty, its function, in every single moment. His love for the cup was not tainted by the fear of losing it. His appreciation was not clouded by the anxiety of a future accident. And so, years later, when a student accidentally knocked the cup from a table and it shattered on the floor, the master was perfectly calm. He looked at the pieces and said quietly, "Of course." The story of the teacup reveals the true gift of understanding Anicca. It does not empty life of meaning, it fills it. A life that lasted forever would have no value. There would be no reason to pay attention, no urgency to love, no cause to be kind. It is the finite nature of a sunset that commands our attention and fills us with awe. It is the knowledge that a conversation will end that makes us listen deeply. It is the awareness that our time with a loved one is limited that makes that time so incredibly precious. Anicca is what gives life its texture, its poignancy, and its profound value. By reminding us that this moment is all that we have, it invites us to inhabit it fully. Therefore, the wisdom of impermanence is not a path to apathy or despair. It is a profound act of compassion for ourselves. It is the permission to finally lay down the impossibly heavy burden of trying to make reality something other than what it is. When we live in the illusion of permanence, we set ourselves up for constant disappointment. We expect our happiness to be a permanent state, so we are crushed when sadness visits. We expect our health and youth to be our eternal right, so we are wounded and terrified by sickness and aging. We expect our loved ones to be with us forever, so we are shattered and lost when they are gone. Our suffering is born from the chasm between our expectations and the truth. Understanding Anicca allows us to slowly, gently align our expectations with reality. This alignment is the very definition of peace. It is not about giving up on life. It is about giving up the unwinnable war against it. It is about learning to surf the waves of change, rather than trying to command the ocean to be still. Anicca is the steady, silent pulse of existence itself. It is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. It is the sacred dance of creation and dissolution, happening right now, in your very own body, in your very own mind. To understand this law intellectually is one thing, but to truly grasp its significance, we must see how our deep-seated resistance to this natural flow is the very architect of our own suffering. We must explore the intimate connection between Anicca and the experience known as dukkha. If Anicca is the universal law of change, the fundamental operating system of reality, then our next question must be, what happens when we resist it? What is the consequence of fighting a battle against the very nature of existence? The answer to that question lies in another Pali word, one that is perhaps more famous and certainly more misunderstood than Anicca. That word is dukkha. It is most commonly translated into English as suffering, and while this is not entirely wrong, it is profoundly incomplete. To hear the word suffering is to imagine only the most dramatic forms of pain, deep tragedy, and overt misery. But the concept of dukkha is far more subtle, far more pervasive, and far more relevant to our everyday lives. Dukkha is not a declaration that life is merely a valley of tears. It is a precise diagnosis. It is the name for the fundamental friction we experience when our deep-seated desire for permanence grinds against the constant, unavoidable reality of impermanence. It is the spiritual, psychological, and emotional discomfort that arises from being at war with what is. To truly understand dukkha, we must see its full spectrum. Buddhist teachings traditionally describe it in three distinct but interconnected layers. The first is the one we all recognize, the dukkha of pain, or dukkha. This is the obvious suffering of life. It is the pain of a headache, the ache of a chronic illness, the sting of an injury. It is the emotional anguish of losing a loved one, the heartbreak of betrayal, the sharp pain of rejection. It is the stress of a difficult job, the frustration of a traffic jam, the anxiety of not having enough money to pay the bills. This is the overt, undeniable hardship that is an inescapable part of having a human body and mind. No one is immune to this form of dukkha. It is the raw, visceral experience of discomfort. The second layer is more subtle, and it connects directly to our discussion of Anicca. It is called viparinama dukkha, the dukkha that arises from change. This is the suffering embedded within our happy experiences. It may sound strange to say that happiness can be a form of suffering, but consider this. Think of the last day of a wonderful vacation. There is a sadness that begins to creep in, a bittersweet quality that tinges the final, beautiful sunset. That sadness is viparinama dukkha. It is the pain that comes from knowing that this joyful experience is ending. Think of the love you feel for a child or a pet, and the quiet, background fear of the day they may no longer be with you. That is viparinama dukkha. The very peak of our joy contains the seed of its own passing, and our awareness of this, however faint, creates a subtle undercurrent of anxiety. We find a job we love, only to live with the low-grade fear that the company might restructure. We achieve a moment of perfect peace, only for the mind to immediately worry about how to hold on to it. This is the suffering of clinging to pleasure, the pain born from the truth that no joyful moment, no matter how perfect, can be frozen in time. The third and most profound layer is sankhara dukkha, the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the baseline, pervasive, unsatisfactoriness of life. It is not a dramatic pain or a bittersweet sadness, but a constant, humming background static of unease. It's the feeling of restlessness when there is nothing overtly wrong. It's the subtle sense of incompleteness, the feeling that something is missing, the perpetual itch that we can never quite scratch. It is the default state of a mind that is always seeking something else, something more, something different from what is here right now. This form of dukkha arises simply from the fact that we are conditioned beings. Our bodies and minds are inherently unstable, unreliable, and in constant flux. We are composite beings, temporary assemblies of changing physical and mental processes. This inherent fragility and lack of a solid, independent core is the deepest source of our existential anxiety. It is the fundamental friction of being a transient self in a transient world. To illustrate how our minds create the most acute forms of suffering, the Buddha offered the brilliant metaphor of the two arrows. Imagine you are walking through a forest, and you are suddenly struck in the arm by an arrow. The physical pain is sharp and real. This is the first arrow. In life, first arrows are unavoidable. They are the difficult events themselves, the illness, the loss, the accident, the breakup. They are a part of the landscape of human existence. They happen to everyone, the wise and the unwise alike. Now, being struck by the first arrow is painful, but what do most of us do next? We immediately shoot ourselves with a second arrow. This second arrow is our mental reaction to the first. It is the storm of thoughts and emotions that follows the initial pain. It is the voice that screams, "Why me? This is terrible. I can't believe this is happening. This shouldn't have happened. My life is ruined." This second arrow is made of our resistance, our self-pity, our anger, our fear, and our obsessive rumination about the first arrow. The Buddha's profound insight was this: while the pain of the first arrow is inevitable, the suffering of the second arrow is optional. It is self-inflicted. Our spiritual work is not to build a magical shield that can deflect all of life's first arrows. That is an impossible fantasy. Our work is to learn how not to shoot the second arrow. It is to learn how to sit with the pain of the first arrow with compassion and wisdom, without adding a second layer of mental torment on top of it. There is a simple, yet powerful, story that illustrates this mechanism perfectly. In some parts of the world, people trap monkeys using a hollowed-out coconut chained to a stake. They cut a hole in the coconut, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through, and they place some rice inside. The monkey, smelling the rice, will come along, slip its open hand into the coconut, and grasp the rice in a tight fist. But now, when it tries to pull its hand out, it cannot. The hole is too small for its closed fist. The monkey will pull and pull, screeching in frustration and fear, but it will not be able to get free. The hunter can then simply walk up and capture the trapped, exhausted animal. The curious thing is that the monkey is not truly trapped by the coconut. It is trapped by its own mind. The trap is not the coconut. The trap is the monkey's own clenched fist. At any moment, all the monkey has to do to be free is to open its hand, let go of the rice, and slip its hand out. But its desire, its clinging to the rice, is so strong that it cannot see this simple solution. It would rather be captured than let go of what it wants. We are this monkey. The rice is anything we cling to in this world: a past relationship, our youth, a success, a particular belief about ourselves, or simply an idea of how life is supposed to be. The clenched fist is our mental resistance, our refusal to accept the reality of Anicca, the law of change. And the trap, the feeling of being stuck, frustrated, and in pain, is dukkha. Consider a painful breakup. The end of the relationship is the first arrow, but the dukkha, the clenched fist, is the endless replaying of memories, the obsessive checking of their social media, the bitter refusal to accept that this chapter of life is over. The suffering is not in the fact that it ended, but in the refusal to let go of the rice. Consider aging. The physical changes are the first arrow. The dukkha is the desperate fight against every wrinkle, the mourning of lost vitality, the refusal to embrace the wisdom and grace of a new life stage. It is the clinging to the memory of a younger self. The freedom is in opening the hand, in letting go of the resistance to the natural unfolding of life. The pain is in the event, but the suffering is in the story we tell ourselves about the event. It is in our clenching fist. Dukkha, then, is not a punishment from the heavens. It is a compassionate signal, an alarm bell from our own hearts, telling us that we are clinging. It is the predictable, mechanical consequence of a mind that is fighting with reality. The trap is not the world. The trap is our own grasp. This powerful, instinctual act of grasping, of holding on for dear life, has a name. It is the engine that drives the cycle of suffering. It is called Upādāna, the fire of clinging and attachment. If dukkha is the feeling of being trapped, and anicca is the ever-shifting nature of the trap itself, we must now turn our attention to the lock. We must examine the mechanism that keeps us bound. In the story of the monkey, the trap was not the coconut, but the monkey's own clenched fist. The state of being trapped was dukkha, but the action of clenching, the refusal to let go of the rice, is something else. This active, energetic grasping has a name in the language of the Buddha. It is called Upādāna. Upādāna is often translated as clinging or attachment, but a more vivid and accurate translation might be fuel. Upādāna is the fuel that is fed to the fire of suffering. It is the ongoing process of taking up, grasping, and identifying with the transient phenomena of the world, based on the deeply mistaken belief that they can provide lasting satisfaction and security. It is the very energy of the clenched fist. Before we explore this further, it is essential to make a critical distinction, one that is often lost in translation and is vital for a Western audience to understand. Buddhist wisdom is not a call for apathy or cold indifference. It does not ask you to stop loving, to stop caring, or to abandon your goals and passions. The Pali language distinguishes between two kinds of desire. The first is chanda, which can be understood as a wholesome, skillful aspiration. It is the desire to learn and grow, the desire to create art, the desire to be a kind and loving parent, the desire to help those in need, the desire to awaken. Chanda is an open-handed energy. It motivates and inspires us without creating suffering. You can have a deep, wholesome desire to see your child thrive, and that love can be a source of great joy. The second kind of desire is tanha, which means thirst. This is the grasping, needy, feverish craving that lies at the root of suffering. It is the voice that says, "I must have this to be happy," or "I must get rid of this to be free." It is the desire of the addict, the insatiable hunger for more. Upādāna, then, is tanha in action. It is the process of taking that thirsty craving and making it the central organizing principle of our lives. It is the clenching of the fist around the object of our thirst, in the desperate hope that it will finally quench us. The ancient teachings identified 4 primary fields where this grasping energy, this Upādāna, operates most powerfully. By understanding them, we can begin to see them in our own lives. The first and most obvious is Kama Upādāna, the clinging to sense pleasures. Our bodies and minds are wired to seek pleasant sensations and avoid unpleasant ones. This is a natural survival mechanism. The problem is not the pleasure itself. The taste of a fresh strawberry, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the beauty of a piece of music. These are gifts of life. The Upādāna, the clinging, arises when we make the pursuit of these fleeting pleasures the cornerstone of our happiness. It is the frantic chase to replicate a pleasurable experience, the desperate attempt to hold on to a good feeling, and the profound frustration and despair when the pleasure fades, as it always must. This is the engine of all addiction, whether it's to substances, food, entertainment, or even praise. We are not addicted to the thing itself, but to the fleeting sensation it provides, and we are clinging to the false promise that this time, the sensation will last. The second field is Upādāna, the clinging to views and opinions. In our deeply polarized and information-saturated world, this form of clinging is rampant. This is the grasping of our beliefs, our ideologies, our political affiliations, and our personal opinions, as if they were our very identity. We don't just have an opinion, we are the opinion. We are a Republican, a Democrat, a vegan, a carnivore, a feminist, a traditionalist. We cling to these labels and the belief systems they represent, and we build a fortress of rightness around ourselves. The suffering, the dukkha, arises the moment our views are challenged. We feel personally attacked. We become defensive, angry, and closed-minded. We are unable to truly listen to another person because we are too busy defending our own conceptual castle. This clinging to views is a major source of conflict, from family arguments to global warfare. We have mistaken our mental map for the actual territory, and we suffer terribly when someone suggests our map might be inaccurate or incomplete. The third field, Silabata Upādāna, is the clinging to rites, rituals, and rules. In ancient India, this often referred to the belief that performing specific religious ceremonies or ascetic practices would automatically lead to salvation, regardless of one's inner state of mind. Today, we can see this clinging in many secular forms. It is the fitness enthusiast who is rigidly attached to their exact workout routine and diet plan, believing that this external form is the magic formula for health and happiness, and becomes deeply distressed if their routine is disrupted. It is the corporate employee who blindly follows company protocol, even when it is inefficient or nonsensical, because they are clinging to the safety of the rules. It can even be the spiritual seeker who becomes attached to the external forms of their practice, believing that a specific posture, a particular cushion, or a certain chant is the key, while losing sight of the core purpose of cultivating wisdom and compassion. This is the clinging that mistakes the form for the substance, the menu for the meal. The fourth and most profound field of grasping is Attavada Upādāna, the clinging to the doctrine of a self. This is the master clinging, the root from which all other forms of clinging grow. It is the deep, instinctual, and largely unexamined belief that somewhere inside this changing body and this fluctuating mind, there is a solid, permanent, independent me. It is this core belief in a separate self that fuels the other forms of clinging. It is this me who wants endless sense pleasures. It is this me whose identity is threatened when its opinions are challenged. It is this me who tries to perfect and protect itself with rules and rituals. It is this me who feels incomplete and is constantly seeking something outside of itself to feel whole. This clinging to a self-concept is the ultimate expression of our resistance to Anicca. We are clinging to the idea of a permanent entity in a universe where no such thing can be found. It is this fundamental grasping that is the source of our deepest existential fears, especially the fear of death, which is seen by the ego as the ultimate annihilation. Imagine trying to hold water in your hands. If you cup your palms gently, with an open and relaxed posture, you can hold the water for a time. You can feel its coolness and wetness. But if you try to possess it, if you clench your hands into tight fists to stop it from escaping, it instantly squirts through your fingers and is gone. The very act of grasping defeats its own purpose. This is the perfect metaphor for Upādāna. Life, experience, and happiness are like water. They can be experienced when held lightly, but they can never be possessed. Upādāna is the clenching of the fist. It creates a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. We feel a baseline sense of lack, the sankhara dukkha. A thirsty craving, tanha, arises to fill that lack. We then grasp, Upādāna, onto some fleeting object, person, or idea. Because of Anicca, that thing changes and slips through our fingers like water. This results in the pain of loss and disappointment, dukkha. This suffering reinforces our original feeling of lack, and so the cycle begins again, often with more desperation. We just try to clench our fist even harder, hoping that the next handful of water will be the one that stays. This is the wheel of suffering, endlessly turning, powered by the potent fuel of our own clinging. Upādāna is the active, energetic process of trying to solidify a river, of clenching our fist around the phenomena of life. To truly understand the nature of this grasping, we must turn our awareness inward. We must begin our investigation in the one place where Anicca and Upādāna play out in every single moment, the place we call home. We must turn our gaze to the body. We have spoken of impermanence as a universal law, of suffering as the resistance to that law, and of clinging as the energy that fuels our resistance. These ideas can seem abstract, concepts for the intellect to ponder, but the path to wisdom is not paved with concepts alone. It requires direct investigation, a personal and intimate seeing. And for this, we have been given the perfect laboratory, a place for practice that is with us from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. This laboratory is the human body. We are invited now to bring our awareness home, to move from the world of thinking to the world of feeling, and to learn the profound lessons that our own flesh and bone have to teach us. For most of our lives, we treat the body as an object that we own, a vehicle that we use, or a statue that we must constantly polish and perfect. But in truth, the body is not a thing at all. It is a process, a living, breathing, ceaseless event. It is Anicca made manifest. The most immediate and obvious demonstration of this is the breath. For a moment, simply feel it. Feel the air entering through the nostrils, cool and distinct. Follow its path as it fills the lungs, a gentle expansion in the chest and belly, and then feel it as it leaves, warmer now, softer, dissolving back into the space around you. This is a complete cycle, an entire lifetime in miniature. There is a birth, the beginning of the in-breath. There is a period of existence, the pause as the lungs are full. And there is a death, the gentle release of the out-breath, followed by a moment of emptiness before the next life, the next breath, begins. Each breath is unique. Some are long and deep, some are short and shallow. None can be perfectly replicated. None can be held onto forever. It is the river of life flowing through you, a constant, reliable rhythm of arising and ceasing, happening entirely on its own. We do not command the breath to happen. It happens through us. The same is true for the heartbeat. You can place a hand on your chest and feel its steady, pulsing insistence. Lub, dub. Lub, dub. A rhythm that has been with you your entire life, yet one you rarely notice. It too changes, quickening with exertion or fear, slowing with rest. It is another layer of the body's ceaseless activity. Deeper still, there is the silent, mysterious alchemy of digestion, the slow grind of muscles, the electric fizz of nerve endings, the tidal flow of blood through a vast network of arteries and veins. On a microscopic level, Your body is a bustling metropolis of trillions of cells, a site of constant construction and demolition. Old cells are dying in their billions, and new ones are being born to take their place. You are not a static entity. You are a standing wave, a pattern through which the universe is constantly flowing. To truly feel the body is to feel this vibrant, unending process. It is to realize that the sense of solidity you have is a trick of perception, and that you are, in fact, a river. This truth, however, is one that modern culture encourages us to furiously deny. Our society is engaged in a collective war against the natural processes of the body. The multi-billion-dollar anti-aging industry is perhaps the clearest example of this. It sells us lotions, serums, supplements, and surgeries, all based on one promise: the promise to halt or reverse the visible signs of Anicca. On social media, digital filters smooth away our wrinkles and blemishes, presenting a perfected, frozen image of ourselves to the world. We are taught to view aging not as a natural and graceful unfolding, but as a disease to be fought, a failure to be hidden. This is Upādāna in its most poignant form. It is the desperate clinging to a past version of the body, the refusal to accept the reality of change. And this war does not bring happiness. It breeds a constant, low-grade anxiety, a dissatisfaction with our own reflection in the mirror, and a deep, abiding fear of the future. The more we fight the signs of aging, the more we suffer when a new wrinkle appears or a new ache settles in our joints. The Buddhist approach offers a radical and ultimately more peaceful alternative. Instead of waging war on reality, it invites us to contemplate it with courage and wisdom. The teachings encourage us to face the undeniable truths of our embodied existence, that this body is subject to aging, it is subject to sickness, and it is subject to death. At first, this may sound morbid or pessimistic, but the intention is precisely the opposite. By mindfully and courageously acknowledging that this body will not last forever, we are liberated from the exhausting struggle to make it so. Acceptance of this truth allows something extraordinary to happen. A profound sense of gratitude arises. Gratitude for the health we have right now, in this moment. Gratitude for the simple miracle of being able to walk, to see, to hear, to breathe. When we are no longer obsessed with preserving a past version of ourselves, we are free to fully inhabit and appreciate the body we have today. Every moment of health, every pain-free breath, becomes a precious gift, not something to be taken for granted. This shift from resistance to gratitude is a shift from suffering to peace. The primary method for cultivating this embodied wisdom is a practice known as kaya gata sati, or mindfulness directed to the body. This is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a direct, felt experience. In the ancient texts, the Buddha instructed monks to analytically contemplate the 32 parts of the body, things like hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones. The purpose of this was not to cultivate disgust, but to systematically deconstruct the ego's attachment to the body as a beautiful, solid, personal possession. It is a powerful antidote to vanity and lust, a way of seeing the body simply as a collection of impersonal, organic components, all of them impermanent, all of them not a self. A more accessible version of this practice for many of us is the body scan. The practice is simple. Lying down or sitting comfortably, you are invited to bring your awareness to different parts of the body, one by one. You might start with the toes on your left foot. Without wiggling them or needing to feel anything special, you simply rest your attention there. What sensations are present? Perhaps warmth or coolness, perhaps tingling or pressure from a shoe, or perhaps nothing at all. The goal is not to judge the sensations or change them, but simply to notice them with a kind and gentle curiosity. From the toes, you slowly move your awareness up through the foot, to the ankle, the shin, the knee, and so on, methodically scanning through the entire body. What you discover through this practice is that the body is a vast and constantly changing field of sensation. Tingles arise and fade, itches come and go, feelings of warmth shift and move. Nothing is static. You are witnessing Anicca in real time, in your own direct experience. You are training your mind to be with the reality of change, rather than constantly fighting it or ignoring it. The body, then, is not an enemy to be conquered or a statue to be preserved. It is our most loyal and patient teacher. It is our anchor to the present moment, the only place where life ever truly happens. It is a living, breathing testament to the universal law of change. Every breath, every heartbeat, every fleeting sensation is a lesson in arising and passing away. By learning to inhabit our bodies with this kind of mindful, non-judgmental awareness, we begin to gently loosen the clenched fist of Upādāna. We begin to see that we are not this body, but we are experiencing life through it. We learn to replace the habit of resistance with the wisdom of acceptance, and we trade the fear of its passing for a deep gratitude for its presence. This practice of observing the tangible, physical world of the body prepares us for an even greater challenge. For if the body is a flowing river, the mind is a wild and turbulent ocean. We must now turn our attention from the impermanence of form to the even more rapid and chaotic impermanence of thought and feeling. Having explored the body as a flowing river of sensation, a tangible field of constant change, we now turn our attention inward to a realm even more fluid, more volatile, and more intimately tied to our sense of self. We turn to the mind. If the body is a river, the mind is the vast open sky, a space where countless forms of weather arise and pass away. The mind is the source of our most brilliant ideas, our deepest love, our most breathtaking creativity. It is also the source of our most persistent anxieties, our darkest fears, and our most painful delusions. For most of us, life is lived as if we are lost in this weather, identifying with every cloud, tossed about by every wind, believing we are the storm. The path of wisdom, however, suggests that we are not the weather, we are the sky that holds it. Our freedom lies not in stopping the clouds from forming, but in realizing our own vast, unchanging nature, the silent awareness in which all mental weather plays out. To begin this exploration, simply try to watch your own mind for a few moments. You do not need to sit in a special posture or be in a quiet room. Simply notice what is happening in your inner world right now. You will quickly discover that the mind is a torrent of activity. A memory from childhood may bubble up, unbidden. A snippet of a song you heard this morning might play on a loop. A sudden worry about a future event may appear, followed by a detailed fantasy of how you will handle it. An image, a daydream, a judgment about the person next to you, a plan for dinner, a feeling of boredom, a sudden spike of irritation. This is the mind's natural state, a ceaseless, self-arising flow of phenomena. We do not consciously will most of these thoughts into existence. They simply appear, like clouds in the sky. This simple observation reveals a profound truth. The mind is not a static thing, it is a dynamic process. There is thinking, but can we find a permanent, solid thinker behind the thoughts? Or is the sense of a thinker just another thought that comes and goes? This is the deep question that mindfulness invites us to investigate. By watching the mind, we see Anicca, impermanence, in its most rapid and undeniable form. No thought lasts. No emotion is permanent. The mind is a waterfall of momentary experiences, arising and ceasing with incredible speed. Our suffering arises not from this natural, ceaseless flow, but from a fundamental error of perception. We make the mistake of identification. We take a temporary, fleeting mental event, like a thought or an emotion, and we fuse it with our very sense of being. The most common and damaging example of this is with our emotions. When a feeling of sadness arises, our common internal language is, "I am sad." This seems like a simple, harmless statement, but it is an act of profound self-constriction. In saying "I am sad," you have equated the entirety of your being with a transient emotional state. You have become the sad person. The sadness is no longer a passing weather pattern. It has become the entire sky. It feels solid, heavy, and personal. There is no room to move, no space for anything else to arise. The wise alternative offered by mindfulness is a subtle but revolutionary shift in language and perspective. Instead of "I am sad," we can learn to note, "I am experiencing sadness," or simply, "Sadness is present." Can you feel the difference? In this new phrasing, a space is created. The sadness is recognized as an event, a temporary visitor, something that is happening in you, but is not the totality of you. You are the space in which the sadness is allowed to arise, and in which it will, eventually, be allowed to pass. This practice applies to all of our emotions. Instead of "I am angry," we can recognize the energy of anger is here. Instead of "I am an anxious person," a label that can become a life sentence, we can observe, "A feeling of anxiety is moving through me right now." This simple act of de-identification is not a suppression of emotion. On the contrary, it allows us to feel our emotions more fully and yet more safely, because we are no longer afraid of being consumed by them. We are not the wave, we are the ocean. The great meditation master, Ajahn Chah, used a beautiful simile to describe this practice. He said the mind is like a forest, and the thoughts are like a troop of wild monkeys, always chattering, screeching, and leaping from branch to branch. There is the monkey of worry, the monkey of regret, the monkey of desire, the monkey of judgment. They are a chaotic, noisy bunch. He said that most people do one of two things when faced with these monkeys. The first is that they run into the forest and try to chase the monkeys down, trying to catch them and silence them. This is the path of suppression and control. It is utterly exhausting and ultimately futile. You will only end up making the monkeys more agitated. The second common reaction is to see the monkeys, become fascinated by their drama, and start leaping through the trees with them, becoming just another agitated monkey in the troop. This is the path of mindless distraction, of being completely carried away by our own thoughts. The practice of mindfulness, Ajahn Chah taught, is the third option. You bring a chair to the edge of the forest, and you sit down. You simply watch the monkeys. You do not try to stop them. You do not join them. You just observe their antics with a patient, detached curiosity. Ah, you note, there is the worry monkey chattering about tomorrow, and there goes the regret monkey, screeching about yesterday. By taking the position of the observer, you are no longer identifying with the chaos. You are the calm presence watching the chaos. You are not the monkeys. You are the one who is aware of the monkeys. This is the essence of meditation. This practice of observation extends to the complex narratives and stories we tell about ourselves and the world. These stories are the favorite songs of our personal monkeys. We all have them. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. No one really understands me. I'll never find happiness. We cling to these stories, these cognitive habits, as if they are immutable truths carved in stone. This is Upādāna, clinging, in its most insidious form, the clinging to a self-concept that causes us immense pain. When we practice observing our thoughts, we begin to see these stories for what they are. They are not objective reality. They are simply habitual, repetitive patterns of thought, like clouds that have passed over our inner sky 1,000 times. By seeing them as impermanent mental events, we rob them of their power. We stop feeding them with our belief. A thought is only as powerful as the attention and credibility we give it. When you stop believing every thought that pops into your head, you find a new and profound sense of freedom. You realize that because these stories are impermanent, they can be changed. You can choose to stop feeding the monkeys of self-criticism and instead begin to cultivate and listen to the monkeys of self-compassion and kindness. The mind, then, is not an enemy to be conquered, nor a wild beast to be tamed. It is a natural process, a creative, energetic, and profoundly impermanent flow. Our suffering does not come from the thoughts and feelings that arise within it, but from our mistaken identity with them, our clinging to them, our belief in their solidity. Our freedom is found not in achieving a permanently silent mind, but in cultivating a mind that is spacious enough to hold all of its changing weather with a compassionate and unwavering awareness. This practice of finding peace within our own turbulent inner world is the necessary foundation for finding peace with others. Having looked at the impermanence of our inner worlds of body and mind, we are now better equipped to turn our gaze outward, to explore one of the most beautiful, meaningful, and often most painful arenas of human experience, an area where our clinging to permanence creates the deepest joys and the most profound sorrows. We turn now to the world of our relationships. Having turned our gaze inward, to the ever-shifting landscapes of the body and mind, we now bring this awareness to the world we share with others. We bring it to the realm of relationships, for it is here, in our connections with parents, children, friends, and lovers, that we experience our most profound joys and our most devastating sorrows. Relationships are the heart of a meaningful life, the sacred ground where we learn to love, trust, and connect. They are also, for many of us, the primary arena where our fear of change and our deep-seated clinging play out in the most dramatic and painful ways. We so often approach love as if it were a construction project, an attempt to build a permanent fortress of security and happiness. But wisdom reveals that a living relationship is not a static fortress. It is a dance. It is a fluid, unchoreographed, and profoundly impermanent movement between two evolving beings. The first and most courageous step in bringing wisdom to our relationships is to acknowledge, without flinching, their inherent impermanence. Every single relationship you have will, in its current form, come to an end. This is not a cynical or pessimistic statement. It is a simple fact, and it happens in several ways. Firstly, people change. The person you are today is not the same person you were 5 years ago, and the same is true for everyone you know. Our beliefs, priorities, tastes, and even our core personalities are in constant flux, shaped by new experiences and insights. To expect a partner or a friend to remain the same person you met years ago is to be in a relationship with a memory, a ghost. This expectation is a primary source of friction and disappointment, as we resent our loved ones for not conforming to the static, outdated image we hold of them in our minds. Secondly, circumstances change. Life is a flowing river of events. People lose jobs, get new ones, move to different cities, develop new interests, face health crises. The container in which a relationship exists is always shifting, and the connection itself must be fluid and adaptable enough to navigate these changes. To expect a relationship to remain unchanged while the world around it transforms is like expecting a boat to remain perfectly still in a flowing current. Finally, and most fundamentally, every relationship is subject to the ultimate impermanence of death. Even the longest, most loving, and most stable partnership will end with a final separation. We spend much of our lives actively denying this truth, living as if we and our loved ones have forever. This denial does not protect us from the pain of loss. In fact, it makes the eventual loss even more shocking and devastating because we are utterly unprepared for the reality of it. To acknowledge the impermanent nature of our connections is not to devalue them. On the contrary, it is the only way to truly value them. It is the only way to awaken from the dream of forever and into the vibrant, precious reality of right now. Our suffering in relationships is almost always a direct result of our clinging, our Upādāna, our refusal to accept this transient, flowing nature of love. This clinging manifests in many ways. We cling to an image, as we have seen, demanding that our partner remain the person we first fell in love with. We also cling to a feeling. We become addicted to the initial, intoxicating rush of romantic love, and we feel that the relationship has failed when this intensity naturally mellows into a different, often deeper, form of connection. We are clinging to the memory of a feeling, unable to appreciate the new feeling that is present now. Most painfully, our clinging manifests as a web of expectations and a desire for control. We create an unspoken contract, a list of rules that our partner must follow to make us feel secure and loved. If you really loved me, you would always want to spend your time with me. You would share all my interests. You would never disagree with me on important matters. These expectations are an attempt to turn a living person into a predictable machine that exists to meet our needs. This is not love. It is an attempt at ownership, and it is suffocating. It suffocates the other person's freedom and individuality, and it suffocates our own peace of mind as we live in a constant state of anxiety, policing their behavior to see if they are fulfilling the contract. This is why the Buddhist tradition makes a vital distinction between two kinds of love. The first, and the one most familiar to us, is attachment-based love. This kind of love is fundamentally transactional. Its silent, underlying question is, how do you make me feel? What can I get from you? It is characterized by neediness, possession, and jealousy. It seeks to find its own happiness through the other person. This love is inherently unstable and a source of dukkha because it is entirely dependent on another person's actions and feelings, which are, by their nature, impermanent and uncontrollable. The second kind of love is called metta, or unconditional loving kindness. This love is radiant, not grasping. Its silent, underlying question is, what can I contribute to your happiness and freedom? It is the genuine, open-hearted wish for another being to be happy, peaceful, and free from suffering, independent of what they can do for you. It is a love that celebrates the other person's autonomy. It is spacious, trusting, and free from the fear of loss, because it is not based on getting anything in return. To cultivate metta is to learn to love the person, not the feeling they give you. It is the difference between wanting to own a beautiful bird and being happy to watch it fly freely in the sky. There is a famous Zen story that beautifully illustrates this. Two monks were traveling together, and they came to a river with a strong current. A young woman was standing there, afraid to cross. The first monk, without hesitation, hoisted the woman onto his back, carried her across the river, and set her down on the other side. He then continued on his journey. The two monks walked on in silence for hours. Finally, the second monk, unable to contain his agitation, burst out, "Brother, what you did was wrong. We are monks. We are forbidden to touch a woman. How could you do that?" The first monk looked at him calmly and replied, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story is a profound teaching on relationships. So often, we are the second monk. We carry our partners in our minds, burdened by past arguments, old resentments, unrealistic expectations, and idealized memories. We are not relating to the living, breathing person in front of us, but to the mental ghost of them that we are clinging to. To love with wisdom is to learn to be like the first monk. It is to learn to put the person down in each new moment, to let go of the baggage of the past and the anxieties of the future, and to meet them as they are, right now. It is to see their presence not as a permanent possession, but as a precious, temporary gift. When we truly understand Anicca, it does not lead to a cold, nihilistic detachment. It becomes the very foundation for a deeper, more courageous, and more appreciative love. Knowing that our time together is finite, we are inspired to be more present, more kind, more forgiving. We stop wasting precious moments on petty arguments because we see the bigger picture. We learn to cherish the simple, ordinary moments, the shared meal, the quiet conversation, the gentle touch, because we know that these moments are life itself. True love is not about finding a person who will never change, or a relationship that will never face challenges. That is a fantasy. True love is the willingness to gracefully dance with another ever-changing, ever-flowing human being. A dance of connection and separation, of joy and sorrow, of life and death, all held in a vast, open heart of unconditional care. This understanding of impermanence in our most intimate connections can now be broadened, allowing us to see this same dance of arising and ceasing in the grander theater of the world around us, in the cycles of nature and the tides of civilization. From the intimate, close-up view of our own bodies, minds, and relationships, let us now pull back the lens. Let us zoom out, far out, and witness the same fundamental laws at play on the grand stage of the world itself. The same principle of Anicca, of impermanence, that governs the life and death of a single thought, also governs the life and death of a star. By seeing this truth operating on a vast, impersonal scale, our own personal struggles with change can begin to feel less like a private failure and more like a natural participation in a universal dance. It can place our anxieties in a much larger context, allowing us to hold them with a little more space and a little more grace. The world around us, in all its majesty and complexity, is a living scripture, and its primary teaching is that nothing lasts. Consider the wisdom of the seasons. In a place where the seasons are distinct, nature puts on a continuous, year-long masterclass in impermanence. Spring arrives with an almost violent burst of energy. The ground, once hard and frozen, softens and yields. Tender green shoots push their way through the dark soil, filled with a raw and relentless urge for life. It is a season of pure potential, of new beginnings, of hope made manifest. Then, this youthful energy matures into the fullness of summer. The days are long and warm. The trees are heavy with leaves, and life is vibrant, loud, and expressive. It is a season of peak vitality, of flourishing, of being fully established in the world. But it does not last. Autumn arrives, and with it comes a profound lesson in letting go. The leaves turn from green to fiery shades of red, orange, and gold, a final, beautiful celebration of what has been. And then, without struggle, without complaint, the trees release them. They let them fall, blanketing the forest floor. They are not clinging to their summer glory. They are gracefully surrendering to the needs of the present moment. Finally, winter descends. It is a time of quiet, of stillness, of apparent death. The land is stark and silent. But this is not an end. It is a necessary fallow period, a time of deep rest, of gathering energy underground, of preparing for the inevitable return of spring. We intuitively understand this cycle. We do not rage against the coming of winter. We do not mourn the passing of spring as a personal tragedy. We recognize each season has its own beauty, its own purpose, and its own time. The great question is, can we learn to view the seasons of our own lives, our own periods of growth, flourishing, letting go, and rest, with this same wise and patient acceptance? This dance of change happens across every conceivable timescale. Look up at the sky and watch a cloud. It is born from formless vapor, takes on a temporary, beautiful shape, a dragon, a castle, a continent, and then, just as gracefully, it morphs, thins, and dissolves back into the blue expanse from which it came. A cloud is a perfect, short-form lesson in Anicca. Now, consider the forest. It may seem timeless and unchanging, a symbol of endurance, but it too is a dynamic process. A great tree, centuries old, is struck by lightning and falls. It is a death, but it is also a birth. Its decay provides rich nutrients for the soil, and the new opening in the canopy allows sunlight to reach the forest floor, giving life to a host of new saplings that were waiting for their chance. Now, zoom out further and look at a great mountain. If anything on this earth seems to represent permanence, it is a mountain. It is a symbol of solidity, of immovable reality. Yet, even the mountain is a slow-motion event. It is being pushed up by the immense patient pressure of tectonic plates, and at the same time, it is being worn down by the equally patient forces of wind, water, and ice. Every raindrop, every gust of wind, is participating in the mountain's gradual transformation. Its life is measured in millions of years, but it is a life, a process of arising and ceasing, just like the cloud. To see this is to understand that there is nothing in the physical universe, no matter how grand or solid it appears, that is exempt from this universal law. This same tide of arising and ceasing governs the creations of humanity. Think of the great empires and civilizations of the past. Stand, in your imagination, in the ruins of the Roman Forum. Picture it in its heyday, a bustling, chaotic center of power, filled with senators in flowing robes, merchants hawking their wares, soldiers marching in formation. To the people who lived there, Rome was the world. It felt eternal, the pinnacle of civilization, destined to last 1,000 years. Their personal concerns, their political dramas, their ambitions and fears felt as urgent and as all-consuming as ours do today. Now, all that is left are broken columns, weathered stones, and the quiet whispers of tourists. The same is true for the jungle-clad temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, or the mysterious mountain cities of the Inca in Peru. These were once the centers of vast, powerful worlds, and now they are monuments to impermanence. To contemplate this is not to become cynical about human achievement. It is to cultivate humility and perspective. Our own civilization, with all of its dazzling technology and seemingly unshakable institutions, is also a temporary phenomenon. It is a wave, rising on the ocean of history. Seeing this can lighten the burden of our own time, helping us to hold our collective anxieties with a bit more wisdom, recognizing that this too shall pass. There is a timeless Taoist story that perfectly captures the wisdom that can arise from this perspective. It is the story of an old farmer and his horse. One day, the farmer's only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "Oh, what terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" A week later, the horse returned, leading a herd of wild horses back with it. The neighbors came to celebrate, saying, "What wonderful luck." The farmer replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, was thrown off, and broke his leg. The neighbors came to offer sympathy, saying, "How awful, such bad luck." The farmer again said, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" A few weeks later, the army came to the village, conscripting all the able-bodied young men to fight in a devastating war. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was spared. The neighbors, thinking of their own sons, came to him and said, "You were right. What incredible good luck." The farmer, looking out at his fields, just smiled and said, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The farmer's peace does not come from having good fortune. It comes from his profound, lived understanding of Anicca. He knows that no situation is final. No event is purely good or purely bad. Life is a constantly changing, unpredictable flow. He does not cling to good fortune or despair over bad fortune, because he knows they are just temporary moments in a much larger, unfolding story. His mind is like nature itself. A river does not curse the boulder in its path, it simply flows around it. A tree does not cling to its leaves in the face of winter, it lets them go. The farmer, like the river and the tree, has learned the wisdom of non-resistance. He has learned to flow with the great current of what is. Observing the world on this grand scale, from the turning of the seasons to the rise and fall of civilizations, offers us a profound sense of perspective. It confirms that change is not a personal attack or a flaw in the design of our lives. It is the fundamental, impersonal, and universal rhythm of all existence. The farmer's story shows us that our suffering comes not from the changing events themselves, but from our frantic rush to judge them, to label them, and to cling to our labels as if they were the final truth. This deep-seated habit of the mind, the constant need to judge our experiences, to label them as good and cling to them, or bad and push them away, is the very mechanism that powers our emotional turmoil. We must now look directly into this subtle trap. We have seen, in the wisdom of the farmer, that peace can be found in not rushing to label life's great events as good or bad. This wisdom, however, goes much deeper. It doesn't just apply to losing a horse or gaining a fortune. It applies to every single moment of our existence. Our minds are, by default, relentless sorting machines. With every sight, every sound, every thought, every physical sensation, an instant judgment is made. A subtle, lightning-fast process labels the experience, sorting it into one of two piles. Good, I like this, I want more of it. Or bad, I don't like this, I want it to go away. This automatic, pre-conscious sorting is the primary activity of the unenlightened mind. It is the very engine that drives the cycle of craving and aversion. the relentless push and pull that creates the fabric of our inner turmoil. To understand this mechanism is to hold the key to understanding our own suffering. In Buddhist psychology, the raw material of this sorting process is called Vedana. This Pali word is often translated as feeling, but it's crucial to understand it not as a complex emotion like love, jealousy, or grief, but as the simple, immediate feeling tone that accompanies every single moment of consciousness. It is the raw, unfiltered data of experience, before we have woven a complex story around it. Vedana arises in one of three flavors. First, there is pleasant Vedana. This is the feeling tone of like. It arises when you taste your favorite ice cream, when you feel a cool breeze on a hot day, when you receive a compliment, or when you sink into a comfortable bed after a long day. It's a subtle, positive hum in the nervous system. Second, there is unpleasant Vedana. This is the feeling tone of dislike. It's the jarring sound of an alarm clock, the physical pain of stubbing your toe, the sting of a critical remark, or the bitter taste of spoiled milk. It's a feeling of friction, of dissonance. Third, there is neutral Vedana. This is the feeling tone that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. This is, in fact, the flavor of the vast majority of our waking moments, but we are conditioned to ignore it completely. It's the feeling of your feet on the floor right now, the sight of a plain wall, the background hum of a refrigerator. It doesn't trigger our more of this or less of this alarm, so it passes under the radar of our attention. This arising of Vedana is an automatic part of being alive. It is not a mistake. The feeling tones themselves are simply information, as neutral as the red, yellow, and green of a traffic light. The problem, the source of all the traffic jams and collisions in our heart, is our automatic, unthinking reaction to these signals. Let us look at what happens when a pleasant feeling tone arises. You take a sip of a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. Instantly, pleasant Vedana appears. Before you are even aware of it, a deeper mechanism kicks in, the mechanism of tanha, or thirst. A powerful craving is born. The mind says, "This is good. I like this. I want more of this." This single thought is the seed of suffering. Why? Because the pleasant feeling is, by the law of Anicca, impermanent. The taste of the coffee fades from the tongue. The initial rush of caffeine subsides. The quiet moment is interrupted. Because we are clinging to the feeling, because we have demanded that this transient experience deliver a permanent happiness, we now experience a subtle sense of loss, of disappointment. The absence of the pleasure becomes a form of pain. Imagine a person sitting down to a delicious meal, a meal they have been looking forward to all day. The first bite is exquisite, a burst of flavor that sends waves of pleasant Vedana through the body. The mind immediately reacts with craving. This is amazing. I must have more. And so they do. They eat quickly, trying to hold on to that peak experience. But the law of diminishing returns is just another name for Anicca. The fifth bite is not as good as the first. The 10th bite is merely pleasant. As their stomach becomes full, the feeling tone begins to shift towards neutral, and then, if they continue, towards unpleasant. Yet, they may keep eating, chasing the ghost of that first perfect bite, trying to force reality to give them the pleasure it no longer holds. They end up feeling bloated, sick, and full of regret. The very pleasure they were clinging to has, through the act of clinging itself, been transformed into a source of pain. This is a perfect parable for our entire approach to happiness. We chase after pleasant experiences, relationships, and successes, and we cling to them so tightly that we inevitably create suffering for ourselves when they change, as they always must. Now let us look at the other side of the coin, our reaction to unpleasant Vedana. You are sitting quietly, and you feel a sudden throb of pain in your knee. Instantly, unpleasant Vedana arises, and just as instantly, the mind reacts with aversion, a form of tanha that wants to push reality away. The thoughts come in a rush. Oh no, not this again. I hate this feeling. It's ruining my day. I need to make it stop. This mental reaction is a declaration of war on your own experience. The initial pain in the knee is the first arrow, as we discussed. It is simply an unpleasant feeling tone. But this frantic, fearful resistance to the feeling is the second arrow we shoot at ourselves. And it is this resistance that causes the true suffering. Think of the experience of anxiety before giving a speech. The initial unpleasant Vedana might be a knot in the stomach or a tightness in the chest. This is the first arrow. But then our mind's aversion kicks in. We tell ourselves, I can't feel this way. This is terrible. I'm going to fail. Everyone will see I'm nervous. This story, this resistance, pours fuel on the fire. Our heart beats faster. Our palms sweat. Our mind goes blank. The initial unpleasant sensation is magnified 100-fold by our desperate attempt to push it away. It is like being caught in quicksand. Our instinct is to struggle violently, but it is the struggle itself that makes us sink faster. The wisdom lies in learning to relax into the discomfort, to allow the unpleasant sensation to be there, without adding the second arrow of mental panic. The way out of this trap, the way to stop being a slave to this automatic cycle of greed and aversion, is through the practice of mindfulness of feelings, or Vedanānupassana. It is the practice of observing these feeling tones as they arise, without getting caught in the reaction. It is about creating a space, a pause, between the signal and the action. The practice is disarmingly simple. When you notice a feeling tone, you simply acknowledge it, gently and non-judgmentally. If a pleasant feeling arises, you mentally note, pleasant, pleasant. You don't try to hold on to it. You don't start planning how to get more of it. You simply observe it as a raw sensation, watching with curiosity as it changes, intensifies, and eventually fades. If an unpleasant feeling arises, you note, unpleasant, unpleasant. You don't push it away. You don't distract yourself. You turn towards it with a gentle courage. You allow it to be there, investigating its quality. Is it sharp or dull? Is it moving or still? You breathe with it, giving it space, treating it not as an enemy, but as a temporary visitor. You do the same for neutral feelings, which trains the mind to be present even when things aren't exciting or painful. This practice systematically dismantles our most deeply ingrained habits. It reveals, through direct experience, that all feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, are impermanent. They arise, they stay for a while, and they pass away. By learning to sit peacefully on the riverbank of our own experience, watching the feelings float by without jumping in after them, we find an unshakable peace, a freedom that is not dependent on what we are feeling. Our inner world is governed by this constant, reactive dance, this chase after pleasure and flight from pain. It is the core generator of dukkha. By learning to observe the feeling tones of life with mindful equanimity, we can step out of this exhausting trap and find a peace that lies beyond both pleasure and pain. To bring all these threads together, now impermanence, suffering, and the path of letting go is no story more powerful or more poignant than that of a woman named Kisa Gautami and her search for a single mustard seed. The principles of impermanence, suffering, and clinging can be understood intellectually, but to truly feel their meaning in our hearts, we often need more than concepts. We need a story. In the vast library of Buddhist teachings, there is no story more human, more poignant, or more powerful in illustrating the entire journey from the depths of agonizing attachment to the peace of profound understanding than the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. Her journey is not a myth from a distant time. It is a timeless map of the grieving heart and a testament to the transformative power of wisdom. Kisa Gotami was a young woman who lived in the time of the Buddha. After a difficult youth, she had found happiness in marriage and the birth of her first and only child, a beautiful baby boy. Her son became the entire world to her, the sun around which her universe revolved. All her love, all her hopes, all her dreams for the future were invested in this tiny, perfect being. Her joy, however, was tragically short-lived. One day, the child suddenly fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was utterly consumed by a grief so powerful that it tipped into madness. She could not and would not accept the reality of her son's death. This was the raw, primal force of Upādāna, a clinging so fierce that it shattered her perception of reality. She clutched the small, lifeless body to her chest and wandered through her village, going from door to door, desperately begging for medicine. "Can you help my son?" she would plead. "He is sick. Please, give me medicine for him." The villagers looked at her with a mixture of pity and fear. They could see the truth that she was blind to. "The child is dead," they would say gently, or sometimes impatiently. But she could not hear them. Their words were meaningless. She believed they were simply refusing to help her. Her grief had become a fortress, isolating her completely from the world and from the truth. Finally, a wise old man, seeing her inconsolable state, approached her with compassion. Instead of telling her that her child was dead, he offered her a sliver of hope. "I do not have the medicine you seek," he said, "but I know of a physician who does. He is the greatest physician of all. Go to the enlightened one, the Buddha. He will have the cure you need." Clinging to this new possibility, Kisa Gotami ran to the grove where the Buddha was teaching. She burst through the crowd, laid the body of her son at his feet, and cried out, "O Blessed One, they say you are a man of great compassion. Give me the medicine that will cure my boy." The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with an ocean of calm, knowing compassion. He did not contradict her. He did not lecture her on the nature of life and death. He met her exactly where she was, in her world of desperate hope. "I can help you," he said calmly. "But to make the medicine, I require one special ingredient." Kisa Gotami's heart soared. "What is it?" she asked. "I will get it for you," the Buddha replied. "I need only a single tiny mustard seed, but it must be taken from a house where no one has ever died." Overjoyed and energized, Kisa Gotami began her quest. The task seemed simple enough. Mustard seeds were common in every home. She went to the first house on the edge of the village. "The Buddha has sent me," she said. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son." The woman of the house, happy to help, immediately went to get some. As she was handing them over, Kisa Gotami remembered the Buddha's condition. "Wait," she said. "Has anyone in this house ever died? A parent, a child, a spouse, a servant?" The woman's face fell. "My dear," she said sadly, "you remind me of my deepest sorrow. My husband died just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami returned the seeds and went to the next house. The people there were also willing to help, but when she asked her question, the answer was the same. They had lost a parent. At the next house, they had lost a child. At the next, a beloved grandparent. She went from house to house, to the grand mansions of the rich and the humble huts of the poor. And everywhere she went, the story was the same. The people would offer her the mustard seed, but every single family had been touched by death. Some would say to her, "The living are few, but the dead are many." Her frantic hope began to slowly, painfully, transform into a dawning, sober realization. As evening fell, Kisa Gotami sat down by the side of the road, exhausted and empty-handed. She looked out over the city as the lights in the houses began to flicker on, one by one. She watched them for a long time, noticing how some lights shone brightly, while others flickered and went out. Then more lights would appear, only to vanish again into the darkness. In that moment, watching the flickering lights, her own personal tragedy dissolved into a universal truth. How like the lives of men are these lamps, she thought to herself. They flare up, and they are extinguished. The lights of the city became a mirror for the arising and ceasing of all conditioned things. She saw that death was not a unique punishment inflicted upon her. It was not her personal failure. It was the shared, inescapable law of all existence. Her heart, which had been clenched in a tight, hard knot of personal grief, broke open. But this time, it broke open with a vast, boundless compassion for all other beings who had to endure this same law of loss. She was no longer just Kisa Gotami, the bereaved mother. She was a woman who understood the fundamental suffering of all beings. Her singular pain had become universal empathy. In that moment of profound insight, she finally accepted the truth of Anicca. She rose, and with a heart now filled not with desperate clinging, but with a solemn peace, she took the body of her son to the charnel ground for its final rites. The story of Kisa Gotami is a masterclass in compassionate teaching. The Buddha knew that a sermon on impermanence would have been useless to her. Her grief was a wall that no intellectual concept could penetrate. And so, he gave her a task, a journey, that would allow her to discover the truth for herself through her own lived experience. The quest for the mustard seed was a skillful means to shift her focus from the narrow, isolating prison of my suffering to the shared, universal reality of suffering itself. In searching for a house without death, she found that her own house was every house. In seeking a cure for her personal loss, she found the beginning of a cure for the universal disease of clinging. Kisa Gotami's story is our story. We all clutch our own dead children to our chests. We clutch our past successes, our lost youth, our failed relationships, our cherished identities. Refusing to accept that they are gone, we wander through the world, seeking a magical medicine that will reverse the laws of reality. The path to peace, as Kisa Gotami discovered, is to undertake our own search. It is to look deeply and honestly at the world and see the truth of impermanence, not as a threat, but as the very nature of life, a nature we share with every other being. This profound story illuminates the pain of losing a loved one, the most personal form of loss. Now, we will turn our attention to a form of attachment that is less tragic, but far more pervasive in our modern culture, the clinging to material things. The profound story of Kisa Gotami reveals the agony of clinging to our most cherished human connections. Her journey shows us that peace is found not in reversing loss, but in accepting the universal law of impermanence. Now, we turn our gaze from this deeply personal form of attachment to one that is less acutely tragic, but perhaps even more pervasive in the architecture of our modern world. We turn to our relationship with things. Our culture is built upon a single, powerful promise. The promise that happiness can be acquired. We are told, from 1,000 different angles every single day, that the feeling of inner lack, of incompleteness, can be remedied by a purchase. A new car will bring you freedom. A new wardrobe will bring you confidence. A new phone will bring you connection. A bigger house will bring you security. We have become a society of consumers, engaged in a collective project of trying to build a fortress of well-being out of material possessions, hoping that if we can just accumulate enough things, we can insulate ourselves from the discomfort of our own minds. The first, most obvious flaw in this strategy is that our possessions are just as subject to the law of Anicca as everything else. In fact, they are often designed to be hyper-impermanent. Think of the most expensive, state-of-the-art smartphone. The day you buy it, it is a source of great pleasure, a sleek object of technological perfection. But within weeks, its perfect screen gets its first, almost invisible scratch. Within a year, its battery life begins to fade. Within 2 years, its software starts to feel slow and clunky as new updates are released. And a newer, faster, more desirable model is being heavily advertised, making your once prized possession feel obsolete. The same is true for a car, a piece of clothing, a home appliance. Every object we own, from the moment it is created, is on a one-way journey toward decay, obsolescence, and disintegration. To place our hope for lasting happiness in things that are designed to break and be replaced is to sign up for a lifetime of guaranteed disappointment. Furthermore, our ownership of these things is itself a fragile, temporary condition. They can be lost in a moment of carelessness, stolen by a thief, or destroyed in a fire or a flood. To build our identity and security on a foundation so unstable is to build our house upon shifting sand. Beyond their impermanence, there is a deeper, more subtle problem. Instead of bringing us the security we crave, our possessions often become a significant source of anxiety. The more we have, the more we have to worry about. The person who buys a luxury car no longer has a simple tool for transportation. They have a constant source of low-grade stress. They worry about it being scratched in a parking lot. They are anxious about its expensive maintenance. They fear it being stolen. The couple who buys a large, beautiful house soon discovers that they have also acquired a demanding, part-time job, a job of cleaning, repairing, furnishing, and maintaining their property. As the saying goes, the things you own end up owning you. They demand our time, our money, and our precious, finite attention. Our mental space becomes cluttered with the burden of managing our material world. This is the anxiety of ownership. The more we accumulate to try and feel safe, the more we have to protect, and the more our lives become governed by the fear of losing it all. The freedom we thought we were buying becomes a gilded cage of our own making. This leads directly to the psychological hamster wheel of consumerism. It is a cycle fueled by the tandem forces of Vedana and Anicca. It begins with a feeling of inner lack or boredom, a form of dukkha. We believe a new purchase will fix this feeling. The act of buying the new item and the initial experience of owning it produces a wave of pleasant Vedana. It's a high, a temporary rush of excitement and satisfaction. But because of Anicca, that feeling inevitably fades. The novelty wears off. The object becomes just another familiar part of our landscape. And so, the original feeling of lack returns, often stronger than before. The mind, remembering the temporary relief of the last purchase, immediately concludes that we need another, newer, better thing to fix the problem. This is like drinking salt water to quench thirst. It provides a moment of relief, but ultimately makes the thirst even more intense. We are chasing a feeling, not an object. And because all feelings are impermanent, the chase is, by its very nature, endless. There is a story that illustrates this contrast perfectly. It tells of a wealthy merchant who lived in a magnificent house, surrounded by high walls. His rooms were filled with chests of gold, rare silks, and precious jewels. He was one of the richest men in the land, but he lived in a state of constant misery. He could not sleep at night, convinced that thieves were plotting to steal his treasures. He was suspicious of his servants, his business partners, and even his own family. He spent his days counting and recounting his wealth, his mind consumed with the anxiety of protecting it. His great fortune had become a great prison. One evening, from his balcony, he saw a wandering mendicant, a monk with a shaven head and simple saffron robes, settling down to sleep peacefully under a tree at the edge of his property. The monk's only possessions in the entire world were the robes on his back and a small bowl for begging food. The merchant watched in disbelief as the monk lay his head down and fell into a deep and tranquil sleep, completely at ease with the world. In that moment, the merchant understood. He was the poorest man, and the monk, who owned nothing, was the richest. This story points to a different kind of wealth, a treasure that cannot be stolen, that does not decay, and that does not create anxiety. In the Buddhist tradition, this is called Upādāna, the treasure of the noble ones. These are the 7 inner qualities that constitute true, lasting security and well-being. They are, firstly, saddha, which is not blind faith, but a deep confidence and trust in the path of wisdom and in our own potential to walk it. Second is sila, or virtue, the wealth of living an ethical life, of intentionally causing no harm to ourselves or others. This treasure brings with it a profound sense of self-respect and peace of mind. Third and fourth are hiri and ottappa, a healthy sense of conscience and moral shame, the inner compass that prevents us from acting in ways that would cause regret. Fifth is bahusaka, the wealth of learning, of having taken the teachings of wisdom to heart. Sixth is kagga, the treasure of generosity. This is the profound joy and freedom that comes from the practice of letting go, of giving freely from the heart without any expectation of return. It is the direct antidote to the poison of grasping. And seventh, the most precious treasure of all, is paññā, or wisdom. This is the direct, unshakable insight into the nature of reality, the understanding of impermanence, and the causes of suffering. These 7 treasures are cultivated within. They cannot be taken from you, and in fact, they grow stronger every time you use them. This is the only investment that yields a permanent return. The relentless pursuit of happiness through material acquisition is a journey destined for frustration. It is a promise that can never be fulfilled, a hunger that can never be satiated. True wealth is not measured by what we have, but by how little we need to be happy. It is the treasure of a mind that is calm, a heart that is kind, and a spirit that is free. This clinging to external things is a powerful force, but there is a form of attachment that is even more subtle, more personal, and more difficult to see. It is the clinging not to what we have, but to who we think we are. The clinging to our ambitions and our very identity. We have journeyed through the more visible territories of our clinging, exploring our attachment to the people in our lives and the material things we accumulate. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter, the source from which all other attachments spring. We come to the most subtle, most pervasive, and most fiercely defended object of our clinging, the idea of me. We are attached not just to what we have, but to who we believe we are. This self, this identity, feels like the most solid and real thing in our lives. It is the protagonist in our personal drama, the center of our universe. But from the perspective of Buddhist wisdom, this solid self is the ultimate illusion, a masterful and convincing story that we tell ourselves every moment of every day And it is the clinging to this story that lies at the root of our deepest fears and anxieties. Who are you, really? Take a moment to consider the question. The first answer might be your name, but your name was given to you. You existed before you knew it. You might say you are your profession, a doctor, a teacher, an engineer, but that is a role, a function you perform, and it can change in an instant. You might say you are your personality, describing yourself as creative, or disciplined, or anxious. But are you always creative? Are you never undisciplined? Are these not just habitual tendencies rather than a fixed essence? You might point to your body, but as we have seen, the body is a constantly changing process, not a static entity. You might point to your thoughts or your memories, but these are like fleeting clouds in the sky of the mind. When we investigate this me we so passionately defend, we find it is not a solid thing at all. It is a brilliant construction, a collage made up of our name, our roles, our memories, our beliefs, and our hopes for the future. It is a story we have built to make sense of the world. This self-concept is like a constellation in the night sky. We see a handful of disparate, distant stars, and our mind draws lines between them, creating a fixed and recognizable image. A hero, a scorpion, a bear. We call this pattern me. We fall in love with the pattern. We defend the pattern, forgetting that it is just a mental projection, and that the stars themselves, the individual moments of thought, feeling, and sensation are constantly shifting, burning out, and being born anew. This clinging to a fixed story of self is the primary reason why change can be so terrifying and painful. When our life conforms to our self-story, we feel secure. But when the reality of Anicca collides with our narrative, the result is profound dukkha. Consider a man who has built his entire identity around being a successful provider. His self-worth is fused with his high-powered job, his large salary, and the status that comes with it. One day, his company restructures and he is laid off. The financial difficulty is one level of pain, the first arrow, but the deeper anguish, the second arrow, is the shattering of his identity. If he is not a successful provider, who is he? The question creates a terrifying sense of groundlessness, of annihilation, because the story he believed to be his very essence has been proven to be impermanent. Or think of a woman who has dedicated 20 years to raising her children. Her core identity is a devoted mother. When her last child leaves for college, the house falls silent, and she feels a vast, aching emptiness. Her role, the central pillar of her identity story, has dissolved, leaving her to ask, what now? Who am I, if not a mother? The pain comes from clinging to a role that was, by its nature, temporary. We also see this in our attachment to our ambitions. Our culture, in particular, celebrates ambition. We are taught to set goals, to strive, to achieve. There is nothing inherently wrong with this. Skillful ambition, or chanda, can be a powerful force for good, motivating us to learn, create, and contribute to the world. The suffering enters when wholesome ambition curdles into Upādāna, a clinging attachment to outcomes. This is the mindset that says, I must get this promotion in order to be happy. I must achieve this sales target to feel worthy. My startup must succeed, or I am a failure. When we are attached to the outcome, the process of working towards the goal becomes a stressful, anxious means to an end. We are no longer present with the work. We are fixated on a future result. If we succeed, we experience a brief, fleeting sense of relief or pride, which is quickly replaced by the anxiety of having to maintain that success or achieve the next goal. If we fail, our sense of self-worth is devastated because we made it conditional on the outcome. The wise alternative is not to abandon ambition, but to transform it. It is the practice of non-attachment to outcomes. This means we pour our heart, our skill, and our passion into our work. We strive for excellence. We give our absolute best in the present moment, but we release our clinging to the results. We understand that the outcome is not, and never was, entirely in our control. It is subject to countless conditions: the economy, the actions of others, luck, the vast, unpredictable web of life. Our sense of worth is not tied to the result. It is found in the quality and integrity of our effort. Success, when it comes, is a welcome and enjoyable fruit of our labor. Failure, when it comes, is not a judgment on our worth, but a valuable lesson, a course correction, an opportunity to learn and grow. There is a story of a great Zen master who was known for his profound equanimity. One day, a neighbor came to him and said, "Master, your discipline is an inspiration to us all. You are a great teacher." The master simply replied, "Is that so?" A few months later, a young woman in the village became pregnant and, under pressure, named the Zen master as the father. The woman's parents, furious, stormed to the monastery, screaming at the master, "You are a fraud, a hypocrite." The master listened calmly and said, "Is that so?" When the baby was born, the parents brought it to him and left it on his doorstep. The master took the child in and cared for it with great tenderness. His reputation was destroyed, but his peace was unshaken. A year later, the young woman, overcome with guilt, confessed that the true father was a young man in the village. The parents, deeply ashamed, went back to the master, bowed low, and begged for his forgiveness and for the return of the child. The master, without a word of blame, handed the baby back to them. He simply said, "Is that so?" The master was free because he was not attached to any story about himself. He was not clinging to the identity of great master, so praise did not inflate him. He was not resisting the identity of fraud, so blame did not crush him. He was simply present with the reality of each moment, responding with compassion and wisdom, unburdened by the need to defend a self-image. This is the deepest and most subtle form of letting go. It is the release of our desperate grip on who we think we are. It is the understanding that our true nature is not found in a fixed story, a role, or an achievement. The self we cling to is a temporary construction, a cloud passing through the vast sky of awareness. True freedom is found in holding this story lightly, in allowing it to change and evolve without our sense of worth being shattered. It is discovering our value not in the impermanent outcomes of our lives, but in the timeless quality of our presence, our effort, and our intention. We have now journeyed through the many fields of our clinging to things, to people, to our very selves. We have seen how this grasping fuels our suffering. The path forward is clear. We must learn the art of letting go. But what does this phrase, so often used and so often misunderstood, truly mean in a practical, spiritual sense? It is not an act of weakness, but one of profound strength and wisdom. We have now arrived at a pivotal point in our journey. We have explored the nature of impermanence. We have seen how our resistance to it creates suffering, and we have identified the mechanism of clinging as the fuel for that fire. The logical conclusion, the clear path forward, seems to be encapsulated in two simple words: let go. This phrase is everywhere in our culture. It is offered as advice for everything from a minor frustration to a major heartbreak. But because it is used so frequently, its profound meaning has been diluted. For many, the idea of letting go conjures images of weakness, of apathy, of becoming a passive spectator to life. It can sound like giving up on our dreams, detaching from our loved ones, and losing our passion for life. In the context of Buddhist wisdom, nothing could be further from the truth. The art of letting go is not an act of resignation. It is the ultimate act of courage, wisdom, and strength. To understand this, we must first be very clear about what we are letting go of and what we are not. We are not being asked to let go of our love for others. In fact, as we will see, letting go allows us to love more purely and completely. We are not asked to let go of our goals, our passions, or our desire to make the world a better place. We are not asked to let go of our effort, our engagement, or our vibrant participation in the dance of life. What we are asked to let go of is something much more specific and toxic. We are letting go of our rigid, fearful, and controlling attachment to outcomes. We are letting go of our angry, stubborn resistance to the reality of the present moment. We are letting go of the arrogant demand that the vast, complex, and unpredictable universe should conform to our tiny, personal blueprint of how things should be. Think of a skilled archer. She applies all of her strength, focus, and training to drawing the bowstring and taking aim. This is her effort, her engagement. But to be effective, she must, at the crucial moment, let go of the arrow. She must release it to its own flight, subject to the unseen forces of wind and gravity. She does not, and cannot, control the arrow after it has left the bow. To cling to it would be to render her effort useless. In the same way, we are asked to apply our full effort and intention to our actions, and then to gracefully let go of our attachment to the results, which are always subject to a million conditions beyond our control. The simplest and most powerful way to understand this is through the analogy of holding a hot coal. Imagine you have accidentally picked up a burning ember from a fire. It is searing your palm, causing you intense and immediate pain. In this situation, what is the strong, intelligent, and wise thing to do? The answer is obvious. You immediately open your hand and drop the coal. This act of letting go is not weak. It is not passive. It is a decisive and skillful action taken to end your own suffering. Now, consider that our clinging, our attachments, are precisely like this hot coal. Our obsessive rumination over a past mistake, our bitter resentment towards someone who has wronged us, our constant, fearful anxiety about the future, our desperate need for a specific outcome to happen, these are not just thoughts. They are toxic mental states that are actively burning us, right here and now. They are the source of our dukkha. Letting go, in this context, is the courageous act of recognizing that we are the ones holding the coal. It is the strength to unclench the fist of the mind, which has been holding on so tightly out of sheer habit, and to simply drop the source of the pain. It is the ultimate act of self-compassion. This principle reveals a profound paradox when it comes to love and care. Let us imagine two people, both caring for a seriously ill loved one. The first person's care is driven by attachment. They are consumed by fear. Their inner monologue is, "You must not die. I cannot live without you. This cannot be happening." While they perform the actions of care, their energy is frantic and fearful. Their presence, though well-intentioned, may feel heavy and anxious to the person who is sick. This carer's own well-being is completely hostage to the outcome of the illness. Their love, while genuine, is poisoned by clinging. The second person practices the art of letting go. Their love for the sick person is just as deep, if not deeper. They provide the exact same measure of physical care, offering comfort, medicine, and support. However, they have inwardly let go of their attachment to the outcome. They have courageously accepted the reality that the illness may or may not be curable, that their loved one may or may not survive, because they are not consumed by their own terror. Their presence is calm, spacious, and deeply reassuring. They are able to respond to what is truly needed in the moment, rather than reacting to their own fear. They can listen with an open heart. They can offer a peaceful sanctuary amidst the storm of illness. This is a higher, more powerful, and more compassionate form of love. It is pure, loving action, freed from the painful toxins of fear and control. This same principle applies to our engagement with the world at large. A common fear is that acceptance means becoming passive in the face of injustice. If I accept reality, we might ask, does that mean I should just accept poverty, discrimination, and destruction of the environment? This is a crucial misunderstanding. Passivity is seeing injustice and, out of apathy or despair, doing nothing. Wise acceptance is the very foundation of effective action. It means seeing the injustice with stark, unwavering clarity, without the distortions of denial or wishful thinking. It means accepting the truth that this difficult situation exists. A skilled doctor must first accept the full reality of a disease before she can devise a treatment plan. To deny the diagnosis would be malpractice. Similarly, a social activist who operates from a place of clear-eyed acceptance is far more resilient and effective than one who is constantly burning out on the fuel of their own rage and frustration. Calm, clear-eyed acceptance is not the opposite of action. It is the firm ground upon which sustainable, intelligent, and compassionate action is built. Therefore, the art of letting go is not an emptying of the heart, but a purification of it. It is not about ceasing to care. It is about ceasing to poison our care with fear, control, and resistance. It is the brave and pragmatic choice to stop fighting with reality, to drop the hot coals of our own making, so that we may live with greater freedom, act with greater wisdom, and love with greater peace. Now that we understand what letting go truly means, we need a practical, reliable method to begin cultivating this skill in our own lives. The most ancient and effective training ground for the mind is the practice of meditation, and it begins with the simple yet profound act of paying attention to the breath. We have now arrived at the heart of practice. We have explored the landscape of our suffering and have identified the art of letting go as the path to freedom. But letting go is not a mere intellectual decision. It is a skill, and like any skill, it requires training. It requires a gymnasium for the mind, a place where we can patiently and repeatedly practice the movements of non-clinging and acceptance. The most ancient, accessible, and profound of these training grounds is the practice of meditation, and the foundation of all Buddhist meditation is a practice called Anapanasati. This simply means mindfulness of breathing. We choose the breath as our primary object of meditation for a few simple and beautiful reasons. It is always with us, from our first moment to our last. It requires no special equipment or belief system. It is utterly neutral. And most importantly, for our purposes, the breath is a perfect, living demonstration of Anicca. It is a constantly changing, rhythmic process of arising and ceasing. To become intimate with the breath is to become intimate with the nature of reality itself. To begin this practice, you don't need to force yourself into an uncomfortable or unnatural position. The key is to find a posture that embodies both relaxation and wakefulness. You can sit on a cushion on the floor with your legs crossed, or you can sit upright in a chair with your feet flat on the ground. The important thing is to keep your spine relatively straight without being rigid. This helps to maintain alertness. Allow your hands to rest comfortably in your lap or on your knees. You can gently close your eyes, or if you prefer, you can leave them slightly open, with a soft, unfocused gaze directed towards the floor a few feet in front of you. Take a moment to settle into your body. Feel the weight of it, the points of contact with the chair or cushion, and then gently bring your attention to the physical sensation of your breathing. There is no need to change your breath in any way. You are not trying to breathe deeply or slowly. You are simply allowing the body to breathe itself, and your job is to feel it happening. You might choose to rest your attention at the tip of the nostrils, noticing the subtle sensation of the cool air entering and the slightly warmer air leaving. Or you might prefer to rest your attention on the chest, feeling the gentle expansion and contraction. Or perhaps you feel the breath most clearly in the abdomen, noticing the soft rise and fall of your belly. Choose one of these anchor points and allow your awareness to rest there, as if it were a butterfly resting gently on a flower. The core instruction is simple. When the breath is coming in, you just know, I am breathing in. When the breath is going out, you just know, I am breathing out. You are not repeating these words like a mantra. You are cultivating a silent, felt knowledge. In, out, in, out. You are simply showing up for your own life, for this one, simple, vital process. Very quickly, you will discover the true nature of your mind. You will set the intention to watch the breath, and within a few seconds, you will find you are no longer watching the breath. You are instead planning your dinner, replaying a conversation from yesterday, worrying about a work project, or simply lost in a daydream. When this happens, it is the most important moment of the practice. The goal is not to feel frustrated or to judge yourself for being a bad meditator. There is no such thing. The wandering of the mind is not a failure. It is the practice itself. This is what minds do. They wander. The practice is in what you do next. The moment you realize your mind has wandered, you have, in fact, just woken up. That moment of recognizing, I'm thinking, is the moment of mindfulness. In that moment of waking up, you gently acknowledge where your mind has been, without criticism, and then you softly, kindly, and patiently escort your attention back to the sensation of the breath. This process will repeat itself dozens, perhaps hundreds of times in a single sitting. You watch the breath. The mind wanders. You notice. You return. This is the practice. Each time you gently bring your attention back, it is like doing one repetition at the gym for the muscles of concentration and mindfulness. Each gentle return is a victory. Each patient return is an act of training in letting go. You are letting go of the story you were lost in, and you are returning to the simple reality of the present moment. You are also witnessing Anicca directly. The fact that your attention does not stay put, the fact that thoughts and sounds and feelings arise, capture your attention, and then fade away, is a direct experience of the impermanent, fleeting nature of all mental phenomena. As your ability to stay present grows, you can begin to refine your observation of the breath itself. Notice its changing qualities. Is this in-breath long or short? Is the out-breath deep or shallow? Is the texture of the breath smooth, or is it slightly ragged? You will see that no two breaths are ever exactly the same. The breath is a constantly changing river of sensation. You can also begin to notice the entire life cycle of a single breath. Notice the very beginning of the in-breath, how it grows to a peak, and how it turns into the out-breath. Notice the beginning of the out-breath, how it empties out, and notice the brief, still pause at the end, before the next breath arises on its own. By observing the breath with this level of detail, You are training your mind to see the arising and ceasing of phenomena at a very subtle level. You are bearing direct witness to the pulse of life. Think of a skilled musician, a violinist. She does not just tune her instrument once before a concert and then forget about it. Throughout the performance, she is constantly listening with incredible sensitivity, making tiny, almost imperceptible adjustments to the tension of the strings to keep the instrument perfectly in tune. Anapanasati is this same practice of continuous gentle adjustment. The breath is our home note, our point of reference. The mind, through its habits, is constantly going out of tune, getting lost in the past or the future. Our job as the meditator is to listen with gentle attention and over again to make that small, kind adjustment, guiding the mind back into harmony with the present moment. This practice is so much more than a technique for relaxation. It is a profound training in wisdom. It cultivates patience as we learn to sit with our restless minds. It cultivates non-judgment as we learn to be kind to ourselves when we become distracted. And most importantly, it allows us to see for ourselves, in our own direct experience, the truth that everything changes. By becoming intimate and at peace with the impermanence of our own breath, we become less frightened by and more at peace with the impermanence of our lives. This simple, foundational practice of watching the breath cultivates the mental calm and clarity needed to look at even more challenging aspects of impermanence. It prepares us to turn our gaze towards the one certainty that all of us share, the one that our culture most desperately tries to avoid. It prepares us to contemplate the end of the breath itself, to explore the wisdom found in Maranasati, the mindfulness of death. The practice of watching the breath, of Anapanasati, gently anchors us in the present moment and allows us to become intimate with the subtle, moment-to-moment flow of change. It cultivates a baseline of calm and clarity. Now, with this stability as our foundation, we are prepared to turn our attention to the most profound and challenging expression of impermanence, the one great truth that our modern culture dedicates immense energy to denying, ignoring, and hiding from view. We are prepared to contemplate the reality of death. The practice is called Maranasati, mindfulness of death. At first, this may sound unsettling, even morbid. We are taught that thinking about death is negative, depressing, and something to be avoided at all costs. But in the context of spiritual wisdom, this practice is considered one of the most powerful, life-affirming, and transformative tools we have. It is not about cultivating a fascination with dying. It is a radical and courageous strategy for learning how to live. Our default mode of being is to live under a subtle spell of denial. We operate as if we have an infinite amount of time. We live as if death is something that happens to other people, an abstract event in a far-off future. This unspoken assumption that we have forever is the source of our most common regrets. It is the engine of our procrastination. Under this spell, we put off what truly matters. We delay the phone call to a parent, assuming there will always be another day to connect. We hesitate to tell the people we love how much they mean to us, believing we will have countless opportunities. We stay in jobs that drain our spirit. We postpone our creative dreams. We waste our precious attention on petty arguments and trivial distractions, all because we are under the illusion that our time is unlimited. Maranasati, the practice of mindfully remembering that death is a certainty, is a method for gently and intentionally breaking this spell. It is not meant to create fear, but to cultivate a sense of what the Buddha called sarvega, a feeling of wise and spiritual urgency. It is a wake-up call from the slumber of our ordinary lives. a reminder that this life is an astonishingly precious and strictly limited time, opportunity. A traditional and powerful way to practice this is through a set of reflections known as the 5 daily recollections. These are not meant to be depressing affirmations, but rather a daily grounding in reality, a realignment of our perspective with the truth. They are meant to be contemplated gently, with a spirit of sober acceptance. The first is, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. This recollection directly confronts our cultural obsession with and clinging to youth. It invites us to find dignity, grace, and wisdom in every stage of life, rather than fighting a battle we are guaranteed to lose. The second is, I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape ill health. This confronts our assumption of perpetual wellness. It fosters a deep gratitude for the periods of health we enjoy, and it cultivates a resilience of spirit that can meet illness not with shock and anger, but with compassion and wisdom. The third recollection is the heart of the practice. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. We are invited to hold this not as a terrifying thought, but as a simple, undeniable fact, as certain as the fact that the sun will rise tomorrow. The only uncertainty is when. The fourth extends this reality to everyone we care about. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change and be separated from. This reflection connects Maranasati to our relationships. It is a powerful antidote to taking our loved ones for granted. It softens the heart and prepares it for the inevitable pain of loss, transforming clinging into precious appreciation. The fifth and final recollection is the most empowering. After facing these unavoidable realities, we remember, I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related to my actions, and live supported by my actions. Whatever I do, for good or for ill, that I will inherit. This is a profound statement of agency. It reminds us that while we cannot control aging, sickness, death, or loss, we have absolute control over one thing: our own intentions and actions in this present moment. This turns the entire contemplation from a passive reflection on helplessness into a powerful catalyst for skillful and compassionate living. In a famous commencement address at Stanford University, the entrepreneur Steve Jobs, after having been diagnosed with the cancer that would eventually take his life, shared a modern version of this ancient wisdom. He said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important." This is the great gift of Maranasati. When you hold the reality of your limited time clearly in your awareness, your priorities naturally and effortlessly clarify. The trivial distractions that consume so much of our mental energy are revealed for what they are: meaningless. The fear of what other people think, the clinging to our reputation, the hesitation to take a risk on something we believe in, all of these begin to dissolve. Ask yourself, if you knew you only had 1 year left to live, how would you spend it? Would you continue in that soul-crushing job? Would you hold on to that bitter grudge against a family member? Would you waste an evening scrolling mindlessly through social media? Or would you focus on connection, on creativity, on forgiveness, on kindness, on experiencing the simple beauty of the world? The contemplation of death acts as a powerful clarifying filter for our lives. It helps us to distinguish the essential from the non-essential. It is the ultimate antidote to clinging to petty grievances, meaningless conflicts, and the anxieties of the ego. It brings us squarely into the present moment and asks the most important question of all. With this one precious and fleeting life, what will I do that is of true value? Thus, the practice of Maranasati is not about dying. It is about waking up to the profound gift of being alive. It transforms death from a terrifying enemy that we must deny at all costs into a wise and compassionate advisor who sits at our shoulder. By whispering the truth of our impermanence, this advisor urges us not to despair, but to live more fully, to love more deeply, and to act with greater purpose and integrity. It teaches us that the best way to prepare for our death is to live each day with mindfulness and a kind heart. By learning how to die, we finally learn how to live. Facing the reality of loss, both our own and that of others, can feel overwhelming. The mind naturally seeks a source of comfort, a way to reorient itself towards a positive footing. Is there a practice, an inner quality, that can act as a direct antidote to the fear and clinging that arise when we contemplate impermanence? There is. It is the practice of gratitude. Having journeyed to the stark and sobering truth of our own mortality, we find ourselves standing at a precipice. The contemplation of death, of Maranasati, is not an end point, but a powerful catalyst. When we truly begin to absorb the reality that our time here is a finite and precious gift, the heart naturally responds. It responds not with despair, but with a deep and poignant appreciation for the life that is pulsating through us, right here, right now. This response, when cultivated intentionally, becomes one of the most powerful and beautiful practices on the spiritual path. It is the practice of gratitude. Gratitude, in this context, is not a passive emotion that we wait to feel when something good happens. It is an active and conscious skill, a way of directing our attention, a powerful antidote that directly counteracts the poison of clinging. The mindsets of clinging and gratitude are fundamentally opposed. They are two different ways of looking at the very same world, two different channels to which the mind can be tuned. The mind of clinging is a mind of poverty, scarcity, and fear. It is constantly focused on what is missing, what is not yet acquired, and what might be lost. It looks at a beautiful, loving relationship, and instead of enjoying the connection, it is haunted by the fear of a future breakup. It achieves a moment of success and immediately begins to worry about how to maintain it. The mind of clinging is always looking forward, anticipating loss, and therefore it can never be at peace in the present. The mind of gratitude, by contrast, is a mind of richness, abundance, and appreciation. It is a mind that has trained itself to see what is present rather than what is absent. Looking at that same loving relationship, the grateful mind thinks, how wonderful it is to share this moment, this conversation with this person right now. It does not deny that the relationship is impermanent, rather that very impermanence makes the present moment of connection all the more precious. Gratitude shifts the entire focus of our consciousness from the fear of a future loss to the appreciation of a present gift. It is absolutely crucial to understand that practicing gratitude is not a form of denial. It is not about pretending everything is perfect or pasting a fake smile over genuine pain. This is not a call for toxic positivity. The wisdom of gratitude is strong enough to coexist with suffering. Imagine a person sitting down to a magnificent feast. There are 50 different dishes, all exquisitely prepared, but their mind fixates on the one dish that is slightly too salty. Their entire experience of the feast is ruined by their focus on this one tiny imperfection. They are blind to the abundance surrounding them. Now imagine another person, who has only a single simple piece of bread, but they are hungry, and the bread is nourishing. They eat it with a feeling of profound gratitude. In that moment, the simple bread is a feast. Who is richer? Who is happier? Our well-being is not determined by our objective circumstances, but by where we choose to place the spotlight of our attention. Even in times of great difficulty, we can practice this. You may have lost your job, a great source of pain, but you can still be grateful for your health, for a supportive friend, for the roof over your head. You may be experiencing physical illness, but you can still be grateful for the care of a nurse, the beauty of the sky outside your window, or the simple, constant miracle of the breath that continues to sustain you. This is not about ignoring the pain. It is about acknowledging that even within a field of pain, there are still flowers of goodness to be found. This practice builds immense resilience, allowing us to find moments of grace even in the darkest of times. We can even take this practice to a deeper, more paradoxical level. We can learn to cultivate gratitude for impermanence itself. At first, this seems absurd. Why would we be grateful for the very law of change that causes us so much grief? But look closely. Without Anicca, without impermanence, there could be no growth, no healing, no change for the better. If everything were permanent, a physical wound could never heal. A misunderstanding between two people could never be resolved. A state of depression would be a life sentence. A foolish person could never become wise. An acorn could never become a mighty oak tree. It is the law of impermanence that allows for all transformation, all learning, all forgiveness, and all liberation. The spiritual path itself is only possible because we are not fixed, permanent entities. We can change, we can grow, we can awaken. To feel gratitude for Anicca is to make a profound shift from seeing change as our greatest enemy to recognizing it as the very agent of our freedom. So how do we cultivate this powerful quality of heart? The methods are simple and accessible to everyone. One of the most effective is to keep a gratitude journal. The practice is straightforward. Each evening, before you sleep, take a few minutes to write down 3 to 5 things from your day for which you are grateful. They do not have to be grand or dramatic. In fact, the power often lies in noticing the small things we usually take for granted. I am grateful for the warmth of my morning coffee. I am grateful for the stranger who held the door open for me. I am grateful for the comfort of my favorite chair. I am grateful that I had enough food to eat today. This simple act, performed consistently, begins to rewire the neural pathways of the brain. It trains the mind to actively scan the world for what is good, beautiful, and nourishing, rather than its default habit of scanning for threats, problems, and imperfections. Another powerful method is to practice gratitude meditation. You can set aside a few minutes to sit quietly and bring to mind something or someone for whom you feel grateful. It could be a person, a pet, or a place. It could be a quality you have, or simply the faculty of sight or hearing. Instead of just thinking the thought, "I am grateful," try to feel the gratitude in your body. Where does it live? Perhaps you feel a warmth spreading in your chest, a softening around your eyes, or a gentle smile forming on your lips. By making gratitude an embodied experience, you are integrating it more deeply into your being. You are steeping your nervous system in the feeling of appreciation and contentment. The key to both of these practices is consistency. A few sincere minutes of gratitude each day is far more transformative than a single, long session once a month. It is a gentle but persistent retuning of the heart. Gratitude is a form of spiritual alchemy. It has the power to transform the lead of our fear and scarcity into the pure gold of present moment appreciation. It is the natural expression of a heart that understands impermanence. Clinging is the clenched fist, desperately trying to possess the water of life. Gratitude is the open, cupped hand, able to receive and hold the water, feeling its coolness and its life-giving quality, without the illusion that it can be kept forever. It is the gracious and joyful companion to wisdom. Through these practices, from mindfulness of breath to the cultivation of gratitude, we have been gathering a set of profound tools. Yet, even on the spiritual path, a subtle form of clinging can arise. We can become attached to the very tools designed to set us free. We have, on our journey together, gathered a collection of powerful and precious tools. We have the practice of mindfulness of breath, a calm anchor in the present moment. We have the contemplation of impermanence, a lens to see the world with greater wisdom. We have the cultivation of gratitude, a method for opening the heart. It is natural and even skillful to cherish these practices. They are our guides, our supports, our companions on the path. However, as we venture deeper into the territory of the mind, we must become aware of a very subtle and profound danger, a trap that has ensnared many sincere seekers. This is the danger of becoming attached to the path itself, of falling in love with the tools and forgetting what they were designed to build. It is the peril of clinging to the very things meant to teach us how to let go. To illuminate this final and most subtle layer of attachment, the Buddha offered a simple and brilliant parable, the parable of the raft. Imagine, he said, a person who finds themselves on the bank of a vast and dangerous river. This shore, where they stand, is filled with peril and fear. It represents our ordinary life, the life of samsara, the endless cycle of suffering driven by ignorance and clinging. The far shore is safe, secure, and peaceful. It represents liberation, nibbana, the end of suffering. There is, however, no bridge or ferry to cross this great expanse of water. The person, being resourceful and determined, decides not to wait. They gather together grass, twigs, branches, and leaves, and by lashing them together with vines, they skillfully construct a simple raft. Relying on this raft, paddling with their hands and feet, they make the difficult journey across the turbulent waters and arrive, at last, safe and sound on the other shore. Having reached their destination, the Buddha then poses a crucial question to his monks. What do you think should this person do with the raft? Should they, thinking, this raft has been so helpful to me, it saved my life, I cannot possibly abandon it, hoist it onto their head and shoulders, and carry it with them as they continue their journey on dry land? The monks replied, No, Lord, that would not be the wise thing to do. The Buddha continued, and what would be the wise thing to do? A wise person would think, this raft has served its purpose. It has brought me safely to the other shore. They would then either push the raft back into the water for someone else to use, or simply leave it on the bank and continue their journey unburdened. The Buddha concluded, in the same way, monks, I have taught the Dhamma, the teachings, as being like a raft, for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of holding on to. This simple story is one of the most important teachings on the entire spiritual path. It reveals that every concept, every practice, every piece of wisdom we have discussed is a tool, a utility, a temporary vehicle. The Four Noble Truths, the teachings on Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, the practice of mindfulness, the cultivation of gratitude, all of it is the raft. These teachings are unspeakably precious. They are skillfully designed and they are absolutely necessary to cross the dangerous river of our own confusion. But they are not the destination itself. Their purpose is to be used, and once their purpose is fulfilled, they too must be let go of. To cling to the teachings is to miss the entire point of the journey. What does it look like, in our modern world, to foolishly carry the raft on our backs? This tendency is often called spiritual materialism, the way the ego co-opts spiritual practices and concepts to reinforce its own sense of identity. It can take several forms. One form is conceptual clinging. A person might learn many Buddhist concepts, memorizing Pali words and complex philosophical arguments. They can talk eloquently about the nature of emptiness and the subtleties of meditative states. They collect concepts and ideas like trophies, building a new, more sophisticated spiritual ego. They may begin to look down on others who are not as learned, judging them for their lack of understanding. They have a beautiful, intricate, and perfectly drawn map of the other shore, but they are still standing on the riverbank, admiring their map. Another form is ritualistic clinging. A person becomes attached to the external form of their practice. They might believe that they must meditate for a precise amount of time each day, on a specific cushion, in a particular posture, for the practice to be valid. The form becomes more important than the spirit of the practice. They are no longer using meditation as a tool to cultivate awareness and wisdom, but as a rigid ritual to prop up their identity as a good meditator. They spend their time polishing the raft, endlessly debating the best kind of wood or rope to use, instead of actually getting in the water and paddling. A third form is identity clinging. The ego, which we have tried to deconstruct, cleverly reasserts itself under a new guise. We become a Buddhist, a meditator, a mindful person. This new identity feels special, perhaps more noble or advanced than our old one. We might subtly signal our spiritual status to others through our words, our clothes, or the books we carry. The path that was meant to dissolve the ego has now become the ego's fanciest and most convincing costume. The great Zen masters had another way of saying this. They said, the teaching is merely a finger pointing to the moon. The moon represents the direct, lived experience of truth, of liberation, of reality as it is. The teachings, the words in this script, the suttas, the concepts, are all just the finger that points the way. A wise person is grateful for the finger. They use it to orient themselves, to know which direction to look. But then, they look at the moon. A foolish person becomes obsessed with the pointing finger. They study its every detail, its length, its shape, the lines on its knuckle. They might write books about the finger, argue with others about the exact angle of the finger, and form schools of thought dedicated to the study of the finger. They spend their whole lives staring at the finger, and they never once see the luminous, beautiful moon. We must not mistake the description for the described. We must not worship the raft. We must use it. The final and most profound act of letting go on the spiritual path is to let go of the path itself. It is to release our attachment to our own progress, our own insights, and our own spiritual identity. It is the realization that the goal is not to become a somebody who is enlightened, but to dissolve the very notion of a separate somebody altogether. It is about becoming lighter and lighter and lighter still, until we are unburdened even by the very tools that set us free. When we learn to let go of everything, our attachments to the world, to ourselves, and even to the path itself, we begin to touch something that is not subject to arising and ceasing. We get a glimpse of a different kind of reality, a peace that is not conditioned by the changing tides of life. We approach the shore of what the Buddha called the deathless. We have journeyed together across the vast and often turbulent landscape of impermanence. We have seen how everything that has a beginning has an end. Our bodies, our thoughts, our feelings, our relationships, our possessions, even the great mountains and civilizations of this world, all are subject to the relentless, universal law of change. To see this clearly can, at first, feel unsettling. If everything is a fleeting, transient phenomenon, where can we find any solid ground? If everything is a process of arising and ceasing, is there anything, anywhere, that is not caught in this cycle? Is there anything that is not born, and therefore does not die? This question, which probes the very limits of our conceptual understanding, was answered by the Buddha, not with a dogma to be believed, but with a possibility to be realized. He pointed towards something he called the unconditioned, the unborn, or most evocatively, the deathless. Before we even attempt to speak of what this is, it is essential that we clear away the thicket of misconceptions that surrounds it, especially around its more common name, nibbana or nirvana. Our culture has repurposed this word to mean many things, almost all of them incorrect. Nirvana is not a place. It is not a heavenly paradise or a celestial realm that one goes to after death. The Buddha was consistently uninterested in metaphysical speculation about other worlds. His entire teaching was focused on the here and now, on the nature of our present experience, and the possibility of finding freedom within it. Nirvana, therefore, is a state that can be realized in this very life, in this very body. It is also not a state of annihilation, a cosmic snuffing out into a blank nothingness, since the separate, solid self we cling to is, as we have seen, an illusion, a temporary construction. Then the extinguishing of this illusion is not the destruction of anything real. It is simply the cessation of a misunderstanding. Finally, nirvana is not a perpetual state of bliss or a never-ending emotional high. Feelings of bliss, joy, and peace are still conditioned phenomena. They arise due to certain causes, and, like all conditioned things, they are impermanent. The deathless is a peace that lies beyond the entire duality of pleasure and pain. It is a freedom that is not dependent on feeling good. So, if it is not a place, not nothingness, and not a feeling, what is it? As it is unconditioned, it cannot be accurately described with the conditioned language of our world. It can only be pointed to with metaphors. Perhaps the most helpful metaphor is that of space. Think of space itself, the vast, empty expanse that contains the entire universe. Within this space, everything happens. Galaxies are born in fiery explosions. Stars ignite, burn for billions of years, and die in spectacular supernovas. Planets coalesce from dust, develop life, and are eventually consumed by their sun or grow cold and barren. The entire contents of space are a magnificent, chaotic, and ceaseless display of Anicca, of impermanence. But what about space itself? Was space ever born? Will it ever die? When a star explodes, is space harmed? When a beautiful galaxy forms, is space improved? The answer is no. Space is unborn, uncreated, and undying. It contains all the change, all the chaos, all the birth and death, yet it remains untouched, unstained, and fundamentally peaceful. It allows everything to happen within it, without being affected by it. Now, let us apply this metaphor to our own minds. Our thoughts, feelings, memories, plans, and sensations are the content of our minds. They are the stars, planets, and galaxies. They are constantly arising, changing, and ceasing. This is the realm of the conditioned, the world of Anicca we have been exploring. But all of this content arises within something. It arises within the field of awareness itself. This awareness is like space. Thoughts of anger may pass through it, but awareness itself is not angry. Feelings of joy may arise, but awareness itself is not joyful. Awareness is the silent, clear, and spacious quality that allows all experience to happen. The realization of the deathless, of Nibbana, is the profound, experiential shift in identity from the content of the mind to the space of awareness in which the content appears. It is the discovery that your true nature is not the fleeting thought or the transient emotion, but the vast, open, and peaceful sky of awareness itself. When this shift happens, you are no longer tossed about by the birth and death of every experience. You are able to watch the weather of your mind come and go from a place of deep, unshakable stability. This is what is meant by the cessation of greed, hatred, and delusion. Those forces are fires that burn within the content of the mind. When you realize you are the space, the fires no longer have any fuel. They simply cease. This leads to a profound paradox. How does one attain this state? How can the conditioned me achieve the unconditioned? The answer is, it cannot. The very act of striving to achieve nirvana for myself is an act of the ego, an act of clinging. It turns the deathless into just another object to be acquired, another goal to be reached. It puts it back into the world of the conditioned. As long as there is a me trying to get it, there is still the illusion of a separate self, and the peace of Nibbana remains obscured. The path to realizing the unconditioned is therefore not a path of addition, but one of subtraction. It is not about gaining something you do not have. It is about removing the layers of obscuration that prevent you from seeing what has been here all along. It is like cleaning a window that is covered in dirt. You do not create the beautiful landscape outside. You simply remove the dirt that was blocking the view. The practice of letting go, of releasing our clinging to things, to people, to our identity, and as we saw with the raft parable, even to the path itself, is this process of cleaning the window. Nibbana is not the reward at the end of a long journey of self-improvement. It is the peace that is revealed when the journey of self-improvement, the project of the ego, is finally and completely laid down. The deathless, then, is not some far-off, mystical goal. It is the ever-present, silent, and spacious nature of this very moment, obscured by the clouds of our ceaseless mental activity and our clinging. It is the profound peace that lies on the other side of our struggle with reality. It is the discovery not of a new self, but of a freedom from the very concept of self. It is the realization that we are not just the fleeting waves on the surface of the ocean, but the vast, deep, and peaceful ocean itself. This profound realization is not meant to remove us from the world. On the contrary, it is meant to allow us to engage with the world more fully, more freely, and with greater wisdom. How then does one live a life that is informed by this understanding? How do we walk, work, and relate to others when we have touched this peace? The answer lies in cultivating what Zen masters call beginner's mind. Having glimpsed the possibility of the deathless, the vast open sky of awareness that lies behind the passing clouds of our experience, we are faced with a practical question. How does this profound insight change the way we live? How does the realization of this ultimate peace translate into the way we wash a dish, speak to a loved one, or walk to work? The answer is, Not that we are removed from the world of change and impermanence. Instead, we learn to participate in it in a radically new way. We learn to cultivate a quality of mind that the Zen tradition calls shoshin, or beginner's mind. This is the tangible, moment-to-moment expression of wisdom. It is the freedom of letting go, made manifest in the way we perceive the world. The great Zen master Shunryu Suzuki famously said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few." This single sentence captures the essence of this profound teaching. Most of us, most of the time, operate from the expert's mind. Through years of experience, we have formed conclusions about everything. We have categorized, labeled, and filed away the world. When we look at a tree, we don't truly see it. We see the mental label tree, and our mind, satisfied with its quick identification, moves on. When we interact with our spouse or a close friend, we don't truly meet them. We meet our story of them, a story composed of all their past actions, our old arguments, and our fixed expectations. We think we already know them. The expert's mind is efficient, but it is also a prison. It lives in a world of second-hand, conceptual reality. It is a world that has grown stale, predictable, and devoid of magic. It is the mind of boredom, of cynicism, and of a quiet resignation to the way things are. Beginner's mind is the antidote. It is the mind that is willing to let go of its conclusions and meet life as it is, right now, without the filter of the past. It is the mind that is empty and therefore ready for anything. It is open, curious, and filled with a sense of wonder. The foundation of beginner's mind is the deep, experiential understanding of Anicca. When you truly know, in your bones, that everything is always changing, you realize that you cannot possibly be an expert. The tree you see today is not the same tree you saw yesterday. It has grown, new leaves have unfurled, a bird may have built a nest in its branches. The person you are speaking to today is not the same person they were yesterday. They have had new thoughts, new experiences, new feelings. You are not the same. Every moment is a completely new and unrepeatable event. Therefore, the expert's conclusion, "I already know this," is always a lie. Beginner's mind lives in the truth of, "I don't know." And this not knowing is not a state of ignorance, but a state of profound openness and intelligence. When we bring this quality of mind to our daily lives, everything is transformed. In our relationships, beginner's mind is a source of constant renewal. Instead of relating to your partner through the dusty filter of your shared history, you approach them with a genuine curiosity. Who are you in this moment? You listen to their words without immediately connecting them to something they said last week. You see their face as if for the first time. This practice is a powerful form of love and respect. It grants the other person the freedom to change and evolve, and it frees the relationship from the prison of old patterns and resentments. It is the foundation of true forgiveness, because it does not cling to a fixed story of who the other person is. In our work, beginner's mind is the enemy of burnout and the wellspring of creativity. Even the most repetitive task, when approached with this mindset, can reveal new subtleties. Instead of thinking, "I have to write another boring report," we can ask, "How can I approach this task with fresh eyes today? Is there a detail I've never noticed?" A more elegant way to phrase this sentence? This attitude brings a sense of play and engagement to our work. It allows for innovation, because the expert's mind is trapped by the conclusion, "This is how it's always been done," while the beginner's mind is free to ask, "What if we tried this?" It is the mind of the true artist and the true scientist, always questioning, always exploring. Most beautifully, beginner's mind allows us to fall in love with the world again. Familiarity can breed a kind of blindness. We stop seeing the astonishing beauty that surrounds us. The practice of beginner's mind is like cleaning the windows of our perception. We begin to notice again the intricate, lace-like pattern of a frost on a window pane, the complex symphony of flavors in a single raspberry, the way the sunlight filters through the leaves of a tree. The world, which had become mundane, becomes magical once more. This is not a mystical talent one is born with. It is a skill that can be cultivated through the deliberate practice of mindfulness. It begins with the intention to drop our labels and meet the raw, sensory data of the present moment. You can practice this right now. Choose a simple, everyday activity that you normally perform on autopilot, like drinking a cup of tea. But for this one time, approach it with beginner's mind. First, just look at the cup. Notice its shape, its color, the way the light reflects off its surface. Feel its weight and warmth in your hands. Bring it to your nose and inhale its aroma. Then, take a small sip. Don't just gulp it down. Let the liquid rest on your tongue. What are the actual taste sensations? Is it bitter, sweet, earthy? Feel its warmth as you swallow. Engage with the entire experience as if you are a being from another planet who has never encountered tea before. By doing this, you are breaking the spell of the expert mind. You are proving to yourself that even the most mundane corner of your life contains infinite depth and richness, if only you are willing to be truly present for it. Beginner's mind is the beautiful, practical outcome of all that we have explored. It is the freedom and joy that naturally arise when we stop clinging to our own conclusions. It is the ability to live in a state of continuous discovery. It is the wisdom to approach life, not with a period, which signifies a conclusion, but with a question mark, which signifies an open and curious heart. This way of living, fresh and open to each new moment, can be summed up in one final, powerful metaphor. It is the image of life, not as a destination to be reached, but as a great river, and the art of living as the skill of flowing with it, not against it. We have journeyed far from the frantic marketplace of our modern anxieties to the quiet, contemplative space of the heart. We have examined the nature of change, the mechanics of our suffering, and the subtle art of letting go. Now, to bring all of these threads together, to weave them into a single, cohesive tapestry, let us rest with one final, all-encompassing image. It is a metaphor as ancient as the hills and as fresh as this morning's rain. It is the image of life as a great and mighty river. This is not just a poetic fancy. It is perhaps the most accurate model we have for understanding our place in the universe and the nature of the path to peace. Your life, my life, all of life is a river, and our only choice is how we navigate its ceaseless current. The river is, in its very essence, the embodiment of Anicca, of impermanence. It is never the same from one moment to the next. The water that flows past you now is gone forever, replaced by new water. The riverbed is constantly being sculpted, the banks eroding in one place, building up in another. The river is not a thing, it is a process, a continuous, unstoppable event. It has its different moods and phases, just like our lives. There are long, slow, gentle stretches where the water is clear and the journey is easy. These are the periods of joy, health, and success. There are also stretches of turbulent, chaotic rapids, where the water churns and boils around hidden rocks. These are the times of sickness, of loss, of heartbreak, of great difficulty. And there are long, murky, uneventful stretches where the water is neither rough nor smooth, but simply flowing. These are the neutral, everyday moments of our lives that we so often ignore. We are all born into this river, mid-flow. We do not get to choose the river's course, nor can we predict what lies around the next bend. We can only choose how we relate to the water we find ourselves in right now. Our suffering, our dukkha, arises entirely from our misunderstanding of and our resistance to the nature of the river. Most of us spend our lives fighting the current in one way or another. One common strategy is trying to swim upstream. This is our desperate attempt to resist change, to go back to the past. We are exhausted, flailing against the immense power of the river, trying to get back to a pleasant stretch of water that we have already passed. We cling to memories of our youth, to past relationships, to former glories, all the while being carried inexorably downstream. Another strategy is to try and dam the river. This is our attempt to create permanence. We build dams of material possessions, of fixed identities, of rigid beliefs, hoping to stop the flow and create a private, predictable, and unchanging reservoir for ourselves. For a time, it might seem to work, but the pressure of the river is relentless. It builds and builds, creating immense stress, and eventually it will find a crack, and our carefully constructed dam will crumble. Or, even if the dam holds, the water within it becomes stagnant, cut off from the living flow. It becomes a lifeless pond, not a vibrant river. Still others, afraid of the river's power, try to cling to its banks. They see the rapids, they fear the unknown depths, and they refuse to fully engage with life. They cling to safety, to routine, to the familiar, avoiding risks, avoiding deep connection, avoiding anything that might sweep them away into the powerful current. But life is the river. To spend one's time clinging to the bank is to never truly live. Perhaps the most common strategy of all is to try and freeze a small part of the river. We arrive at a particularly beautiful, sun-dappled spot where the water is clear and warm. This is a moment of great happiness, and our immediate instinct, our clinging mind, tries to possess it. We try to freeze it, to make it solid, to hold on to it forever. But what is frozen water? It is ice. It is hard, cold, brittle, and lifeless. In our very attempt to possess the living, flowing moment, we kill its vitality and turn it into a source of pain when our hand grows numb and we are forced to let it go. Wisdom is the art of learning to navigate the river as it is. It is to stop being a frantic, drowning victim and to become a skilled and graceful boatman. A wise boatman does not fight the river. He respects it. He studies it. This study is the practice of mindfulness. He pays close attention to the changing currents, the eddies, the ripples on the surface that signal a submerged rock. He is fully present with the reality of the river in each moment. He does not control the river, but he does have a rudder. The rudder is his intention, his values, his conscious choice. He uses the rudder to steer his craft, to navigate around obstacles, and to keep his boat oriented in a wholesome direction. This is not passivity. It is a supremely skillful and active participation. The wise navigator goes with the current, using the river's own energy to travel. This is acceptance. It is the grace of non-resistance. He also knows the importance of traveling light. He knows that a boat weighed down with heavy cargo of past resentments, of anxieties about the future, of heavy material and psychological attachments, unwieldy and likely to capsize in the rapids. The practice of letting go is the process of lightening this load, of throwing the unnecessary cargo overboard, so that our vessel becomes light, nimble, and resilient. With this understanding, our very definition of peace changes. We realize that peace is not to be found in some imaginary, stagnant pond where nothing ever happens. That is the peace of lifelessness. True spiritual peace is the peace of the skilled navigator in the midst of the rapids. The world around them is chaotic, powerful, and unpredictable. Yet they remain internally balanced, calm, focused, and present. Their stability comes not from the absence of motion, but from the quality of their own mind. And finally, we realize that the meaning of this journey is not to be found at some imagined destination downriver, some final, perfect waterfall at the end of all things. The meaning is found in the journey itself. It is found in the skill we cultivate, in the beauty we notice along the banks, in the kindness we show to fellow travelers in their boats, and in the courage we find to navigate the rapids. It is in learning to appreciate the whole river, the calm stretches, the challenging stretches, and everything in between, as the glorious, unpredictable, and sacred process of life itself. We began this journey together by acknowledging a deep and quiet ache in the heart of our modern lives, the friction that comes from our longing for permanence in a world that never stops changing. We started with the feeling of being at war with reality, exhausted by the struggle to hold on. From that starting point, we have traveled far. We gave a name to the universal law of change, Anicca, recognizing it not as an enemy, but as a fundamental principle of existence. We looked directly at our own suffering, our dukkha, and saw that its true source was not the change itself, but our own resistance, the clenching fist of our clinging, our Upādāna. We investigated this clinging in the intimate laboratories of our own bodies and minds, in the tender and complex world of our relationships, and in our attachment to possessions, and to the very stories of who we think we are. And along the way, we have gathered tools, ancient and effective tools of practice, mindfulness, contemplation, gratitude, and a truer, wiser understanding of what it means to let go. The final and most vital understanding to carry with you from this journey is this: the goal of this path is not to win the war against impermanence. It is not to finally succeed in damming the river of life or freezing its waters. That is the old struggle, the very source of our disease. The profound secret is that true peace is not an external condition that we can arrange. It is not a final destination of perfect, undisturbed calm. Peace is an inner skill. It is a quality of heart and mind that we cultivate right in the midst of the flowing, changing, unpredictable river of life. It is the discovery that stability is not found when the world outside holds still, but when the mind within learns to be spacious, accepting, and wise. Peace is the unwavering tranquility of the deep ocean, which remains undisturbed by the turbulent waves on its surface. It is the quiet, open sky that is unstained by the storm clouds that pass through it. This peace is your true nature, and it is available to you in every moment, regardless of the conditions of your life. Therefore, you are not a helpless victim of circumstance. You are not a powerless boat being tossed about on the river. You have a rudder. You have the power, in this very moment, to choose your relationship with reality. The path forward is not about becoming a perfect, emotionless saint. It is simply about becoming a little wiser, a little kinder to yourself and others, a little more present for the precious, fleeting moments of your life. The power lies in the simple, repeated choice, the choice to notice your clenched fist of clinging and, with a gentle and compassionate intention, to open your hand. The choice to notice your resistance and to soften around it. The choice to notice your thoughts without believing every one of them. This freedom is not in a distant future. It is as close as your very next breath. In the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, you have a constant reminder of the flow of life and a constant opportunity to come home to the peaceful, spacious awareness that has been here, waiting for you all along.